Chapter 2220. You don't have to care about my life or death. Lu Ping shouted, and activated his primordial spirit to release a secret technique. His blood that was about to freeze started to rise in temperature. In the blink of an eye, it started to boil and red flames started to burn. Lu Ping's body turned into a flame. His speed increased tremendously, and he almost flew into the air. He ran far away, and distanced himself from Han the Iron. Han the Iron frowned and chased after Lu Ping. However, even if his speed reached its limit, he could only keep up with Lu Ping. He could not get close to Lu Ping. How long can you last by burning your essence blood to release the escape technique? Han the Iron said coldly. When you can't take it anymore, the ice blades in your body will attack even more fiercely. You will definitely die. Essence blood was the foundation of a cultivator's blood. This escape technique was rare. Once it was released, the effect would be shocking. This burning blood escape technique was similar to the blood escape technique, but they were not the same. The blood escape technique consumed a part of the cultivator's blood in exchange for a short period of time. It would not damage the foundation and body. However, this burning blood escape technique required continuous burning of essence blood. If it could not be stopped, the continuous burning of essence blood would cause irreparable damage to the cultivator. The cultivator's foundation would be damaged, and he might even die. Lu Ping could temporarily block the attack of the ice blades in his body because of the huge power that came from burning his essence blood. This power was used to increase his speed and to block the ice blades in his body. When the essence blood in his body was exhausted, he would definitely die like what Han the Iron said. Lu Ping was clear about this, but he did not stop. If not for Junior Brother Su, I would have died in the fourth heaven. Junior Brother Su saved my life. I can't let him die during his ascension. Senior Brother Yi sacrificed himself. I can't let him down. Not only do I have to remind Junior Brother Su, but I also have to remind the other disciples of the academy that I have to hold on. Lu Ping repeated these thoughts in his mind. After a long journey, the essence blood in his body burned faster and faster. His body became weaker and weaker, but his gaze became more determined. I want to see Junior Brother Su alive. I want to tell Junior Brother Su everything. Then Junior Brother Su can stop the other senior brothers. With this stubbornness, Lu Ping's will to live was astonishing. Just like Yi Fei, he refused to give in. On the square, looking at the academy's cultivator who was burning with flames and had cold air coming out of his head. His face was pale but his gaze was unusually firm. Everyone was moved. At this moment, many cultivators finally understood why Qingquan Academy was ranked as one of the 4 great immortal sects. Everyone gradually understood that Yi Fei was willing to risk his life to protect something. That was the dignity of Qingquan Academy. The disciples of the academy would never lower their heads. If this continues, this disciple of the academy won't be able to survive. Sigh, I didn't expect this to be the outcome. The Qingquan Academy has lost 2 people in succession. This time, the Red Rainbow and Fanta is the only one on the Earth ranking. But they have won the respect of many people. Lu Ping was an Earth immortal who couldn't even pass through the fourfold heaven. There was a huge gap between him and Han the Iron. However, under the gaze of countless cultivators, Lu Ping escaped under the pursuit of Han the Iron. Finally, he saw the teleportation array that led to the fourfold heaven. The eyes of the academy's elders were red as they watched this scene. When Lu Ping arrived at the teleportation array, he turned around and smiled at Han the Iron. Then, he left the fourfold heaven and disappeared. Han the Iron stood there and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he didn't chase after Lu Ping. Even if he didn't chase after him, Lu Ping was already a dead man. Moreover, the fourfold heaven's terrain was complicated and lush with vegetation. If he encountered Su Zimo there, the outcome would be unpredictable. There was no need to take this risk. Thinking of this, Han the Iron turned around and walked toward the earth-ranking stone tablet. Fourfold heaven. In front of the huge willow tree, Su Zimo held a small green branch in his hand. This branch was the treasure of the fourfold heaven. This treasure was called Sui Mu. In fact, it was a stone that had fallen off Sui Mu. However, it looked like a tree branch and was full of vitality. Su Zimo held the Sui Mu, Qinglian's real body had a strong desire to devour the Sui Mu. She wanted to devour the power of the Sui Mu and take it for herself. He hesitated for a moment and didn't throw the Sui Mu into the prison-suppressing cauldron. Instead, he kept it in his storage bag. If the prison-suppressing cauldron devoured the Tai Bai stone, the fourth wall of the cauldron could be repaired. Although the Azure Dragon Divine Soul showed no signs of awakening, if he could obtain other treasures, it wouldn't be too late to throw them to the prison-suppressing cauldron. However, there weren't many treasures that were suitable for Qinglian's real body to absorb. The willow branches danced around Su Zimo and gently brushed his shoulders. They looked extremely obedient and didn't look as aggressive as they just now. The middle of the trunk of the huge willow tree had just been broken open by Su Zimo, and he had taken the Sui Mu. Even with the help of the Sui Mu, its strength was no match for the creation of Qinglian. At that moment, it knew that its life and death was in the hands of Su Zimo, and began to beg for mercy. Su Zimo had a mocking expression as he looked at the willow tree before him and sneered. "You're only begging for mercy now?" Suddenly, Su Zimo sensed something and looked sideways towards the teleportation formation not far away. A figure stumbled over with a pale face and purplish lips. It was Lu Ping, who had ascended not long ago. "What's going on?" Su Zimo hurried forward and shouted. "Junior brother Su, I can't make it. Please don't ascend." When Lu Ping saw Su Zimo, his heart relaxed and he panted. "Tai Hua and the others are guarding the earth-ranking stone steel and are prepared to join forces to deal with you. The others of the academy have been sealed by them. Let's talk about it later." Su Zimo's spirit consciousness moved and circled Lu Ping's body. He could not help but frown. Lu Ping's blood essence had been burned to ashes. At that moment, the frost chi ice blades that Han the Iron had injected into his body exploded with a terrifying power. His flesh, bones, and organs had all been frozen into ice. Su Zimo went forward to help Lu Ping. Just as his palm touched Lu Ping's arms, they shattered into countless ice shards and fell to the ground. Lu Ping's body had lost its vitality and was completely crippled. The frost chi rushed into Lu Ping's spirit consciousness and wanted to freeze his primordial spirit. Su Zimo noticed the scene and attacked decisively. He directly released rich and pure primordial chi into Lu Ping's body and crushed the frost chi ice blades. Lu Ping's primordial spirit survived. However, his body shattered completely in that clash, turning into a pile of ice shards that scattered beneath Su Zimo's feet. "It's nothing to lose my body. At least I'm still alive." Lu Ping's primordial spirit laughed bitterly. Suddenly, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. "That body of yours is nothing. I'll give you an even better body." Chapter 22-21. A better body. Lu Ping smiled bitterly, thinking that Su Zimo was comforting him. This is the 9 heavens. How can there be a physical body that can replace it? Su Zimo did not say anything. He protected Lu Ping's essence spirit and returned to the front of the willow tree. The willow tree seemed to have realized something as well and was a little afraid. Its drooping willow branches swayed slightly. "I'll give you 2 choices now," Su Zimo said indifferently. "First, I'll erase your essence spirit. Your soul will dissipate and all your memories will be erased. Creation Qinglian, the only one in the world, the god of plants. The plants in this space might not recognize Creation Qinglian. However, when they sensed Su Zimo's aura, they felt a fear that came from the depths of their souls and chose to submit. However, the willow tree was greedy. When it sensed the powerful life force emanating from Su Zimo, it wanted to make use of the Sui tree to devour Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not intend to let it off to begin with. The willow tree trembled, and its tender willow branches caressed Su Zimo's clothes continuously, as though it was begging for mercy. Su Zimo continued. "The second choice is for you to not resist and let my senior brother possess your body. When your essence spirits fuse, he will inherit your memories as well. From a certain perspective, you will be reborn in another way, and leave this place to see the vast world outside." In fact, Su Zimo could erase the essence spirit of the willow tree directly, and allow Lu Ping's essence spirit to reside in the body of the willow tree. However, Lu Ping was a human while the willow tree belonged to the plant race. Even if Lu Ping could control the body of the willow tree, he would feel uncomfortable and would not be able to unleash the full power of the body. The body of the willow tree had lived for a long time in the fourth heaven and devoured countless earth immortals. Its life force was immense and unimaginable. Even heaven immortals of the human race might not be comparable to it. Over the years, it had been occupying Sui Mu to cultivate. The power contained in this body was extremely terrifying. Otherwise, it wouldn't have dared to challenge Su Zimo. In order to unleash the full power of the willow tree's body, Lu Ping had to possess it, and the willow tree's primordial spirit did not resist. Although the willow tree had fallen, Lu Ping could inherit its memories. It was equivalent to the fusion of two primordial spirits. In this way, this body would not reject Lu Ping's primordial spirit. This was the best of both worlds for Lu Ping and the willow tree. The willow tree was silent for a while before it sent out a divine sense to agree with this decision. If it did not agree, it would be killed by Su Zimo. He might as well be possessed by Lu Ping and leave this world. Junior brother Su. Lu Ping listened from the side and gradually understood what Su Zimo meant. You can inherit this body first. If you don't like it, you can replace it yourself if you find a better one in the future. Su Zimo said. All right. Lu Ping was agitated and quickly agreed. Without the protection of a physical body, his primordial spirit could encounter danger at any time. Furthermore, the body of the willow tree before him did not seem too bad. At that moment, Lu Ping did not realize how terrifying and vast the power contained in the body of the willow tree was. For him, this was the greatest opportunity he had ever had in his cultivation up till this point. Su Zimo sent Lu Ping's primordial spirit into the willow tree's consciousness. Although time was tight, he was not in a hurry to leave. He stood on the spot and protected it silently with a burning gaze. The willow tree was too bold. If it suddenly changed its mind after he left and turned around to devour Lu Ping's primordial spirit, it was not impossible. When the willow tree sensed Su Zimo's gaze, the final ripple in its heart calmed down as well. It gave up on resisting completely and allowed Lu Ping's essence spirit to possess it. The two primordial spirits began to come into contact and gradually fused. The willow tree's primordial spirit was a gigantic ball of green light. Although it was still an earth immortal, the primordial spirit power emitted by this ball of light was much stronger than Lu Ping's primordial spirit. In front of this gigantic ball of green light, Lu Ping's primordial spirit was at most a fingernail-sized light spot. If it had not completely given up resisting, Lu Ping would not have been able to possess it successfully. Under Su Zimo's gaze, this ball of light absorbed the energy of the ball of green light bit by bit and continued to grow. Not long after, the energy of Lu Ping's primordial spirit finally surpassed that of the willow tree. The speed of absorption was also much faster. After a while, there was only a ball of primordial spirit left in this consciousness. The possession was a success. Of course, the willow tree's memories were very complicated, and Lu Ping still needed some time to digest all these memories. After the two primordial spirits merged, it was not very stable, and he had to continue waiting. No matter what, at least Lu Ping's life was no longer in danger. Moreover, after he completely controlled the body of the willow tree, there should be no one in the fourth heaven who could threaten him. Su Zimo turned around and walked towards the teleportation formation expressionlessly, preparing to ascend to the fifth heaven. Junior brother Su, don't go. At this moment, Lu Ping's spirit consciousness was transmitted over. His primordial spirit was not very stable, and this spirit consciousness was also fluctuating slightly. Tai Hua and the rest sealed the disciples of the academy. It was senior brother Yi who sacrificed his life to break free from the seal and warned me. That was why I had the chance to escape. Sacrificed his life? Su Zimo stopped in his tracks and frowned slightly. Senior brother Yi is dead. He released the life-breaking sacrifice art and broke free from the seal on his body. He warned me to be careful and also asked me to stop you from ascending. Senior brother Yifei scolded Tai Hua for being shameless and was killed by him after spitting blood all over his face. Lu Ping's spirit consciousness was transmitted over one after another. Su Zimo's expression became colder and colder. Senior brother Yifei is dead. Although Su Zimo had been in Qianquan Academy for 1,000 years, the two of them only met for the first time at this 10,000 years meeting. There was no friendship between the two of them. At most, they were fellow disciples. Su Zimo did not even have a deep impression of this senior brother Yi Fei. However, he had not expected Yi Fei to die tragically at the fifth heaven. He had once thought that as long as Qianquan Academy did not interfere in his feud with Great Jin and Flying Immortal Sect, the disciples of the Academy would be spared from the calamity and bloodshed. However, he had not expected that not only did the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom and Flying Immortal Sect want to kill him, they wanted to teach Qianquan Academy a lesson as well. Su Zimo's expression was grim, and his killing intent was torrential as he walked towards the teleportation formation. Junior brother Su, why are you still heading over? Lu Ping watched as Su Zimo walked further and further away, and was increasingly worried. However, his essence spirit had just fused and was not stable enough. He could not control the willow tree body completely, and could not transform into human form. Unable to leave, he could only be anxious. It's nothing. I'm just going to bring senior brother Ye's corpse back. Su Zimo stood on the teleportation formation, and paused for a moment. His eyes were cold as he said slowly, also some people have to be buried with him. Book guest residence reading website. Chapter 2222. In the square. Seeing this scene, everyone who heard Su Zimo's words had different expressions. Some shook their heads and sighed, some looked disdainful, and some looked worried. When Heaven Immortal Bai Hai saw that Lu Ping had escaped and told Su Zimo about it, he was still a little worried, afraid that Su Zimo would be afraid and not proceed. Seeing that Su Zimo had ascended to the fifth heaven, he heaved a sigh of relief and felt relieved. I know this kid too well. He will never back down. Duke Yuanzhua smiled as if he had already expected this scene. He said, this kid is audacious and unscrupulous. There's nothing he doesn't dare to do. It's good for young people to be aggressive and hot-blooded. Bai Hai smiled and said, it's a pity that he's going to die this time. At this moment, there were already 8 Earth Immortals from the Dajin Celestial Nation, including Han the Iron. There were also 10 Earth Immortals from the Flying Immortal Sect, including Immortal Tai Hua. A total of 22 people from these two forces had entered the 9th heaven. Now, 18 people had arrived and were waiting for Su Zimo to come to them. Among them, there were also peak stage Earth Immortals like Immortal Tai Hua, Qingqunzi, and Han the Iron. With such a big lineup, even a first stage or second stage Heaven Immortal would most likely die here. Your Highness, will Mr. Su be alright? Su Xiaotian looked worried and asked softly. Xie Qingqing opened his mouth slightly and stopped talking. In the end, he didn't say a word and sighed softly. If Su Zimo hadn't released so many trump cards in the 4th heaven, he might still have a chance to live. But now, he had broken through the 4th heaven and consumed a lot of energy. Many of his trump cards had been released in advance and couldn't be used again in a short period of time. On the other hand, Immortal Tai Hua, Qingqunzi, Han the Iron, and the other Earth Immortals had been waiting for a long time and were conserving their energy. Not to mention the difference in strength between the two sides, they were also in different states. How could they fight this battle? The elders of the academy stood in place, looking sad and angry. They couldn't stop Su Zimo from ascending, and could only let the situation develop. Among the people present, there was probably only one person who was the most relaxed and calm. Yun Ting looked at the figure in the 9th heaven and drank a bowl of strong liquor. He murmured, "You won't disappoint me, will you?" In all fairness, even if he were in their shoes, he wouldn't be able to guarantee that he would win this round. Strong winds howled and yellow sand rolled. In front of the earth-ranking stone tablet, a corpse lay there motionless. The sandstorm had covered more than half of the body. There were also dozens of figures scattered around, either sitting or standing. Everyone had different expressions on their faces, but when they occasionally opened their eyes, they all faintly revealed a trace of anticipation. Not long after, a figure strode over from afar. It was Han the Iron, who had just now chased after Lu Ping. He had finally returned. "Where is he?" Qingqunzi raised his brows and asked. "He ran away." Han the Iron didn't say much, but answered coldly. He ran away. Qing Chenzi frowned and questioned. You are the great commander of the Executioner Earth Guards. How could you let such a small character escape? He burned his blood essence to release an escape technique. I couldn't catch up with him. Han the Iron said. However, he was hit by my ice blade. He definitely won't survive. Immortal Tai Hua opened his eyes and sneered slightly. He was also a little angry and complained. But if he tells Su Zimo about this, our preparations might be in vain. He won't. Han the Iron's voice didn't fluctuate at all. He said, before this I've studied Su Zimo. If he knows that the disciples of the academy died in the hands of you and me, he will definitely ascend. Oh, Immortal Tai Hua asked. Knowing that he will die, he still came? He's not afraid of death. Han the Iron said coldly. Immortal Tai Hua was about to speak when his expression suddenly changed. At the same time, all the cultivators in front of the earth-ranking stone tablet sensed something. Some people who were resting with their eyes closed also opened their eyes. Even Feng Yin's expression changed, and he looked into the distance. Amidst the vast expanse of yellow sand, a figure was slowly walking towards this place. This person seemed to be moving very slowly. However, with every step he took, the ground under everyone's feet would tremble, as if a peerless monster was about to be born in the depths of the earth. An extremely terrifying killing intent permeated between heaven and earth, making one's heart tremble. He's here, Immortal Tai Hua, and the other 18 top earth immortals of the Dajin Immortal Kingdom, and the Flying Immortal sect stood up one after another. Their eyes lit up and powerful auras also burst out of their bodies, as if condensing into a tide, and whizzing towards that figure. Which of the earth immortals who could make it here, and leave their names on the earth-ranking stone tablet, hadn't been famous for many years? Which one of them wasn't a peerless genius? Any one of the 18 of them would not be afraid of Su Zimo, if they stood out. Rumble. Su Zimo's aura collided with the incoming aura. A series of thunder seemed to have sounded in the sky, and the space trembled. Su Zimo didn't retreat at all. He was still moving forward. He really dares to come? Yu Feng of the Mountain and Sea Immortal sect frowned slightly. Maybe he wants to perish together with the geniuses of the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal sect. Xia Yin sighed softly. Perish together? Yunlei shook his head and said, with the 3 earth immortals, Immortal Tai Hua, Qing Chenzi and Han the Iron, he won't even have that chance. What a strong killing intent, Feng Yin, who was far away, suddenly murmured softly. Immortal Tai Hua, and the others moved and rushed forward. In the blink of an eye, they surrounded Su Zimo. Seeing that there was no one guarding Qi Hong, Xia Yin went to her side and used a dermic art, trying to remove the restriction in Qi Hong's body. However, Immortal Tai Hua's restriction was too overbearing. He continuously used dermic arts, and could only break the restriction on Qi Hong's tongue. Most of the restrictions on her body couldn't be affected. Junior brother Su, Qi Hong looked sorrowful. As soon as she could speak, she yelled, Senior brother Yi was killed by Tai Hua. You have to avenge him and kill Tai Hua. Don't worry. Su Zimo looked around and looked at Tai Hua and the others. He said slowly, today, all the earth immortals of the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal sect will die with senior brother Yi. Hee. Chapter 22-23. No one dared to believe that Su Zimo would dare to make the first move under the siege of Tai Hua and the other peak earth immortals. A peerless ferocious creature that was filled with killing intent and condensed from countless sword chi emerged from the ground and bit towards Qing Chenzi. Qing Chenzi did not expect that Su Zimo's attack would come from underground. The gravity in the 5th heaven was far greater than the outside world, and the ground under everyone's feet was much harder and sturdier than the ground outside. The scene of Su Zimo's foot cracking the ground was too shocking. Qing Chenzi was stunned for a moment, and a ferocious beast rushed out from under him with a murderous aura. Quick! After all, Qing Chenzi's combat power was predicted to be in the top 10 of the Earth list. In the face of this sudden attack, although he had lost the initiative, his reaction was extremely fast. He immediately activated his qi and blood, raised his qi, rose into the air, and released the light body mystic technique without hesitation. At the same time, Qing Chunzi kept waving his hands downwards, condensing his essence qi into wisps of black silk that wrapped around the ferocious beast and slowed it down. The other cultivators of the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal sect also made their moves. Some rushed towards Su Zimo, while others released their immortal arts and divine powers. All of them attacked the ferocious beast that emerged from the ground. With everyone joining forces, there was naturally no way they would watch Su Zimo attack Qing Chunzi without doing anything. Immortal Tai Hua stretched out his fingertips and quickly drew a complicated rune in mid-air that emitted a dazzling brilliance. He was about to hit Su Zimo. All of a sudden, Immortal Tai Hua sensed something and turned around abruptly. He looked at Qing Chunzi, who was leaping into the air, and shouted, "Watch out above!" Seeing that he had escaped the pursuit of the ferocious beast beneath him, Qing Chunzi heaved a sigh of relief and relaxed a little when he heard Immortal Tai Hua's warning. Immediately after, a large shadow shrouded over his head. An even more terrifying killing intent shrouded him. It was bone-chilling and almost seeped into his internal organs. Qing Chunzi only felt his scalp tingle and his hands and feet turn cold. At this moment, his heart almost jumped out of his chest. Since he started cultivating, he had experienced several life and death crises. However, he had never felt so close to death. Blood mist gushed out. Qing Chunzi's body was devoured by a gaping mouth and was instantly crushed into a blood mist. His essence spirit did not even have the chance to escape and was destroyed on the spot. Even until his death, Qing Chunzi did not know who had killed him. As for the many cultivators watching from the sidelines, they could see everything clearly. Just as the ground cracked open and the winged creature charged out, countless sword chi condensed into a divine dragon in the sky and swooped down. The combined attack of the dragon and snake, their killing intent overflowing to the heavens. Qing Chunzi died on the spot. Hiss! In the square, sounds of people sucking in cold air could be heard. Many cultivators looked at the scene in the 9 heavens in shock. Surrounded by 18 peak-stage Earth-level deities, Su Zimo had killed Qing Chunzi of the Flying Immortal sect as soon as the battle began. What was that dragon snake just now? What a terrifying attack! Even through the firmament ancient mirror, I can feel that killing intent. I don't know if that's a divine power or a secret skill. I've never heard of it before. This should be Su Zimo's strongest trump card. The crowd was in uproar. When the earth emits killing intent, the dragon snake rises from the ground. If I'm not wrong, just now's attack should be the legendary earth-slaying sword art. The perfected immortal Xia Ling said slowly. Earth-slaying sword art? Su Zimo from the academy actually has 2 of the 3 great sword arts, the human-slaying sword and the earth-slaying sword. No wonder Yin Ting declared war on him. If that's the case, Qing Chunzi's death by the earth-slaying sword art is justified. As soon as his voice fell, it caused an even greater uproar. Most of the cultivators did not recognize that attack at all. Only Yin Ting's expression was normal with a faint smile on his face. He was not surprised at all. Back in the Emperor's tomb, when the 2 of them fought, Yin Ting had seen Su Zimo's 2 great sword arts. However, even with the 2 great sword arts, they were no match for his human-slaying sword. In the 9 heavens, Qing Chunzi's death did not stop the battle. Instead, the attacks of the other cultivators intensified. Nobody dared to underestimate Su Zimo anymore. A portion of the cultivators attacked and destroyed the soaring serpent divine dragon, formed by the earth-slaying sword art. The other portion charged towards Su Zimo. Han Iron's physique was strong and his blood chi was strong. With a cold expression, he arrived before Su Zimo in the blink of an eye, and was prepared to engage in melee combat. From the prediction of the Earth ranking, he knew that Su Zimo was strong in melee combat. Back in the depths of the 2nd heaven, the 2 of them had fought once as well. However, the current situation was completely different from before. Even if Qing Chunzi was dead, there were still more than 10 cultivators holding back Su Zimo. Among them was Immortal Tai Hua, who had the most terrifying attacks. As long as Su Zimo was distracted, he would definitely be severely injured in melee combat. Roar! All of a sudden, Su Zimo opened his mouth with a stern expression and let out a deafening roar like a vajra. It sounded like a dragon's roar, a phoenix's cry and a myriad of beasts roaring. With Su Zimo as the center, the terrifying power of the sound domain was almost corporeal as it spread out like a wave. Many cultivators shuddered. When a few cultivators saw Su Zimo speak, they realized that something was amiss and hurriedly released their sound domain mystic skills. However, their sound domain mystic skills were completely vulnerable against Su Zimo's dragon roar mystic skill and were destroyed easily. The attacks of those cultivators collapsed instantly. Even the runes that immortal Taihua had just condensed in his hands showed signs of collapsing. The first to bear the brunt was Han Iron. Han Iron's eyes widened and he growled. He circulated his dermic art, and a layer of ice quickly formed on his ears as he felt the impact of the dragon roar mystic skill. Crack! Crack! The layer of ice shattered instantly, but it also blocked the greatest damage of the dragon roar mystic skill. With Han Iron's physique and blood chi, he could completely withstand the remaining power. Although the attacks of the other cultivators collapsed, they did not hurt his foundation. Some cultivators' blood chi surged and surged like waves to resist the impact of the dragon roar mystic skill. Some cultivators had weaker physical bodies, but could release sound domain mystic skills that could mitigate a lot of damage. Some only had a trace of blood seeping out of their ears. As they circulated their essence chi and blood chi, their injuries would be healed. Of the remaining 17 Earth Immortals, only one of them had a stiff expression and a blank gaze. He stood motionless and fell to the ground with blood flowing out of his 7 orifices. That cultivator was from the Flying Immortal sect. His weak physical body was his greatest weakness. However, in terms of immortal spells and mystical powers, he was second only to immortal Taihua. To his surprise, he was killed by Su Zimo's dragon roar mystic skill on the spot, before he had the chance to attack. The cultivator collapsed on the ground like a pile of mud. All his bones had been shattered by the dragon roar mystic skill. In the blink of an eye, 2 people from the Flying Immortal sect died. Chapter 22-24. King Chenzi. In the square, Heaven Immortal Bai Hai's expression turned cold when he saw King Chenzi's death. He closed his folding fan and murmured with a look of pity. However, before he could finish his sentence, he saw Su Zimo unleashing the dragon roar mystic technique. Then, another person from the Flying Immortal sect died. Yu. Heaven Immortal Bai Hai could not suppress the shock in his heart. He stood up with a thud, his expression furious. Su Zimo was unharmed in the battle, but the Flying Immortal sect had already lost 2 people. How could he remain calm? It's too tragic. That Earth Immortal from the Flying Immortal sect was roared to death. For Su Zimo, even if he dies now, he has already profited. Hearing the discussions around him, and sensing the gazes of many cultivators, Heaven Immortal Bai Hai took a deep breath, and gradually calmed himself down before sitting back down. He had to admit that the cultivators who besieged Su Zimo were indeed peak-stage Earth Immortals. At this distance, the Dragon Roar mystic technique's lethality was extremely terrifying. However, only one of the remaining dozen Earth Immortals died. Immortal Taihua watched his fellow sect member die, but there was nothing he could do. The sound domain mystic technique was instantaneous, and could only protect himself at most. It couldn't save others at all. Moreover, after using the sound domain mystic technique, Immortal Taihua felt a strong killing intent. He didn't have time to think at all. He had been targeted by Su Zimo. The sound domain mystic technique only made the attacks of the other cultivators collapse. Su Zimo's real target was Immortal Taihua. He didn't even care about Han the Iron who was beside him. Instead, he used the True Dragon's 9 flashes to appear behind Immortal Taihua in an instant, and stretched out his hand. The Great Chaos Essence Palm erupted and pressed down on Immortal Taihua's head. Yifei was killed by Immortal Taihua, so the first person Su Zimo wanted to kill was Taihua. The Dragon Roar mystic technique, True Dragon's 9 flashes, and Great Chaos Essence Palm were all used to kill Immortal Taihua. When Immortal Taihua saw Su Zimo disappear, he activated his divine consciousness without hesitation and waved his hand, sending the rune condensed in his hand over. Boom! The Great Primordial Chaos Palm collided with the rune, causing a loud explosion. Su Zimo did not retreat even half a step. On the other hand, Immortal Taihua's expression remained unchanged. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and used his movement technique to increase the distance between him and Su Zimo. Both sides were evenly matched in this battle. Neither side had the upper hand. Whoosh! Su Zimo's figure disappeared once again. When he reappeared beside Immortal Taihua. He raised his hand and threw a punch that was as ferocious as a falling meteorite. Immortal Taihua didn't look sideways. He seemed to have sensed something and didn't take any action. Instead, he suddenly moved dozens of feet to the side, avoiding the most powerful point of Su Zimo's punch. Immediately afterwards, Immortal Taihua's essence energy scattered in mid-air and quickly drew another rune that was imprinted on Su Zimo's fist. Bang! When the rune exploded, Su Zimo's figure also took half a step back. This reincarnated immortal was indeed a little tricky. If it were anyone else, they might not be able to dodge the 9 true dragon flashes once. However, Immortal Taihua had dodged twice in a row. Even before this, Su Zimo had released the Dragon Roar Mystic Technique, the Great Primordial Chaos Palm, and other mystic techniques, but he still couldn't gain the upper hand. Su Zimo could still release the 9 true dragon flashes 4 more times. However, he speculated that even if he chased after Immortal Taihua again, it would be difficult to kill him in a short period of time. Besides, the other Earth Immortal powerhouses around him kept attacking. He would definitely be in a tough battle. By then, he might not even be able to afford to exhaust Qinglian's true body. I have to get rid of the others first. Su Zimo squinted slightly and calmed down. In an instant, he made a judgment about the situation. As long as Immortal Taihua was left alone, even if he was a reincarnated perfected immortal, Su Zimo was absolutely confident that he could bury him in the 9th heaven. On the other hand, Immortal Taihua looked shocked on the surface, but there was a storm in his heart. Just now, he seemed to be dodging casually and calmly. However, he might die on the spot if he was a little bit off. This Stage 8 Earth Immortal indeed had the power to kill him. He couldn't underestimate him. Su Zimo's figure disappeared again. Immortal Taihua's expression was solemn, as he emitted a huge amount of divine senses. His 5 senses were raised to the maximum, and he was on guard. He didn't realize that the 18 peak Earth Immortals had unknowingly taken the initiative to attack Su Zimo. Su Zimo released the 9 true dragon flashes and didn't appear beside Immortal Taihua. All of a sudden, one of the executioners sensed something. Die! That person's scalp went numb, and his hair stood on end. He roared and turned around without looking. He used his palm as a knife and slashed down. As expected, Su Zimo was right behind him, expressionless and cold. That person's palm seemed to have turned into a long knife and slashed down. Su Zimo suddenly attacked. His entire arm looked extremely soft, as it rested on the palm of the executioner Earth Guard. Su Zimo's palm curled and shook. Crack! Poof! The sound of bones cracking could be heard and blood mist filled the air. Right in front of everyone, the entire arm of the executioner Earth Guard was twisted at a terrifying angle. His bones broke and his flesh exploded. Ah! The executioner Earth Guard cried out in pain, but stopped abruptly. Su Zimo took advantage of the situation and attacked again, slapping the face of the executioner Earth Guard. Crack! 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 The head of the executioner Earth Guard spun a few times on his neck. His gaze was blank, and he fell to the ground. His essence spirit was destroyed and he was dead. Boom! Boom! A few immortal techniques descended and Su Zimo's figure disappeared on the spot. Swoosh! An Earth Immortal of the Flying Immortal sect had just released an immortal technique and a mystic art. He was relatively weak when Su Zimo appeared beside him. Bang! Bang! The two of them fought in close combat. After exchanging 2 blows, the top of that person's head was shattered by Su Zimo's palm. His essence spirit was destroyed and he died on the spot. Although the 18 Earth Immortals were powerful and stood at the peak of the Earth Immortals, not many of them could block Su Zimo's attacks in close combat. Immortal Taihua pinched 2 runes with both hands and exuded a terrifying aura. However, he still did not attack. It was not that he did not want to save them, but every time Su Zimo released the true dragon flash, no one knew who Su Zimo would appear next. Immortal Tai Hua had to be on guard all the time in case Su Zimo suddenly appeared and attacked him. I'd like to see how long you can use this movement technique. Immortal Tai Hua sneered. As a result, no one could stop Su Zimo from releasing the True Dragon Flash 4 times in a row and killing 4 Earth Immortals on the spot. The 18-peak stage Earth Immortals joined forces, and a great battle broke out. In less than 10 breaths, Su Zimo was unscathed while 6 people from the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect had already died. In the square, many cultivators were dumbfounded. This scene was completely beyond their initial imagination. In fact, they even had an illusion that this was not the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect besieging Su Zimo. This was Su Zimo hunting down the Dajin Immortal Sect and the Flying Immortal Sect. Chapter 22-25. Great! Well done! The elders of the Academy couldn't help but shout when they saw the Earth Immortals of the Dajin Celestial Kingdom and the Flying Celestial Sect fall one after another. Before this, the Dajin Celestial Kingdom and the Flying Celestial Sect had gone overboard against the Qinquan Academy. The elders could only watch helplessly as Yifei died. Their stomachs were filled with anger, but they had nowhere to vent it. Now that they saw this scene, the few elders felt their blood boil. The other cultivators in the square were also shocked and speechless. Su Zimo's methods were too ruthless. Although Su Zimo's methods were stunning when he cleared the 5th heaven previously, it was not as impactful as it was now. Now 6 peak Earth Immortals had died in the hands of Su Zimo. This kind of bloody and tragic scene was far more shocking than passing through the 5th heaven. The cultivators of the Dajin Celestial Kingdom and the Flying Celestial Sect looked terrible. Heaven Immortal Bai Hai also stood up. His eyes were gloomy and he was furious. He looked in the direction of the Qinquan Academy and wanted to say something, but didn't in the end. The Qinquan Academy had only lost Yifei, but the Flying Celestial Sect had lost 5 people. However, he couldn't blame the Qinquan Academy. Not long ago, he had said that if the disciples of the Flying Celestial Sect were killed in the 9th heaven, it was because they were not skilled enough, and he wouldn't step in. If he stood out to blame the Qinquan Academy in front of everyone, it would be like slapping his own face. It's too early to cheer now. Seeing the agitated expressions of the Qinquan Academy's elders, Duke Yuan's was sneered. When Su Zimo can't use this strange movement skill, he will inevitably face Tai Hua and Han the Iron head-on. I'd like to see how long he can last. In the 9th heaven, Su Zimo attacked continuously. With the Sound Domain secret skill, Earth-slaying sword art, 9 true dragon flashes and other secret skills, he killed 6 people in a row. These were his most powerful trump cards. At this moment, he used them without holding back. After 6 people died, the remaining 12 peak Earth Immortals didn't retreat. Even their formation didn't collapse. They still surrounded Su Zimo. These Earth Immortals were all on the Earth roll. The life and death of others was not enough to scare them off. On top of that, the Earth Immortals were also very perceptive. When Su Zimo reappeared, the 12 Earth Immortals came to the conclusion that Su Zimo could no longer use the 9 true dragon flashes. Let's see what else you can do next. Han the Iron stared at Su Zimo and said coldly. Just now, with Su Zimo constantly flashing around, he had no chance to engage in close combat with Su Zimo, allowing Tai Hua and the others to attack with all their might. Executioners, heed my orders. Han the Iron suddenly shouted. Attack him with all your strength. Fight him in close combat and kill him. Yes, the remaining 7 executioners responded at the same time. They channeled their blood chi and charged toward Su Zimo. Crash. The sounds of tsunamis surged from the bodies of the 7 executioner guards. Kill. Then, behind the 7 executioner guards, strange phenomena appeared one after another. They exuded a terrifying aura and were filled with murderous intent. Although there were only 7 of them, when they moved together, it was like an army of thousands of men and horses. Their momentum was terrifying, as if they were going to crush everything. 7 executioner guards, 7 bloodline phenomenons. The cultivators inside and outside the 9th heaven were shocked. Bloodline phenomenons were the pinnacle of a body-tempering cultivator's blood chi. It was extremely difficult to cultivate. When they saw the beam of light in Immortal Tai Hua's hand, the expressions of the elders of the academy dimmed, and they no longer had any hope. Under such an attack, Su Zimo definitely had no chance at all when Immortal Tai Hua condensed another supreme mystical power. Immortal Tai Hua wanted to kill all of them and eliminate all variables. Elder Zhong looked at Heaven Immortal Bai Hai and said indignantly, "Great! Your reincarnated immortal is really powerful. His essence soul has already cultivated to the Heaven Immortal realm. In the 9 heavens, I'm a reincarnated perfected immortal. I don't plan to leave the mountain at all, and I'm not interested in fighting with you juniors." Immortal Tai Hua held the sword of the white rainbow in his hand and looked at Su Zimo, who was surrounded. He said calmly, "However, senior sister Meng Yao came to me personally and told me to send you on your way personally." Book Guest House Reading Website. The 6-tusked divine elephant behind him waved its 3 heads and 6 arms and roared at Han Tai and the others who were charging at him. "Get lost!" Even without the 6-tusked divine elephant and 3 heads 6 arms, just Qinglian's true body was enough to fight against the bloodline phenomenon of the Executioner Earth Guards. Now that he had released an innate divine power and a peerless divine power, Su Zimo's strength was almost at its peak. Boom, 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 boom. Su Zimo punched 6 times consecutively with Han Tai and the sword of white rainbow above his head. He went all out and clashed head-on with the other 6 Executioner Earth Guards. A series of deafening explosions shook the heavens and earth. The bloodline phenomenon of the Executioner Earth Guards was destroyed by Su Zimo's fists. They could not withstand it at all. 6 figures were sent flying. Some of the Executioner Earth Guards were still in mid-air when their bodies exploded into a cloud of blood mist. They were completely crippled and lost their ability to fight. Some of the Executioner Earth Guards had strong physiques. Although their bodies were not destroyed, they were severely injured. Their organs and bones were broken. These Executioner Earth Guards could not withstand the power of the 6-tusked divine elephant and 3 heads 6 arms at all. They were already extremely lucky to be able to withstand Su Zimo's attack. It proved that their strength was at the peak. If it was any other Earth immortal, they would have been reduced to dust and their bodies and souls would have been destroyed. At the same time, the sword of white rainbow descended. Han Tai's palm blade came down as well. Su Zimo ignored the 2 attacks and channeled his spirit consciousness once more, releasing 2 great mystic powers. Before the 6-path executioners could land on the ground, golden lotuses suddenly sprouted from the ground beneath them. Bang! 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 When the golden lotuses collided with the bodies of the Executioner Earth Guards, the immense power shattered their bodies and destroyed their essence spirits. The few Earth Immortals of the Flying Immortal sect at the side hurriedly released their mystic powers to destroy the golden lotuses on the ground, wanting to save the remaining Executioner Earth Guards. However, more lotuses descended from the skies. Since Su Zimo had made his move, there was no way he would give these people of the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom any chance of survival. A great mystic power of the Buddhist sects. Heavenly flowers rain and golden lotuses bloom from the earth. There was no way they could escape from the pincer attack of the 2 great mystic powers. The 6 Executioner Earth Guards with bloodline phenomenons were all killed, and their essence spirits were destroyed. It was a shocking scene. Su Zimo's counterattack was so ferocious that countless cultivators shuddered, and even felt a hint of fear. Even the other reincarnated immortal Feng Yin, who had been resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and looked over with a hint of caution in his eyes. What happened? Chapter 22-27. Just now the battle between the 2 sides was too intense. Although it took a long time to describe, it only took a few breaths of time. Su Zimo's counterattack was too fierce. It was only when the 6 Executioner Earth Guards were killed that many cultivators who were watching the battle realized what had happened. 3 heads 6 arms, a peerless divine power. I can't believe it was released by a level 8 Earth deity. The 6 Executioner Earth Guards with bloodline anomalies were killed by a peerless divine power and 2 Buddhist divine powers. They didn't even have a chance to fight back. Flowers rained from the sky and golden lotuses bloomed from the ground. One needs to comprehend the Buddhist divine powers to the extreme to be able to successfully cultivate these two divine powers. As far as I know, some Buddhist disciples can't even release these two divine powers. There was a hubbub of voices and countless cultivators were excited as they discussed the scene just now. Good. The elders of Qianquan Academy were so excited that they couldn't say anything else. They just kept praising Su Zimo. You're still pretending even at this point? Heaven Immortal by Hai sneered. This kid's primordial spirit has cultivated to the Heaven Immortal level and has such combat strength. As the elders of Qianquan Academy, you don't know? Hee. Elder Zhong also sneered. Su Zimo entered Qianquan Academy 1,000 years ago and immediately went into seclusion. He only appeared a few days ago. This is also the first time we've seen him. We really don't know what kind of techniques he has. Hearing this, the other cultivators were even more shocked. Xie Qingqing said. This means that after Brother Su entered Qianquan Academy, he actually didn't have time to cultivate the Academy's techniques, and his combat strength has already reached such a level. Strong. Too strong. Xie Qingqing could not help but exclaim. The Earth Leaderboard's prediction of Brother Su's ranking this time is really too lacking. Good kill. Yin Ting drank a bowl of strong wine and said loudly, that was really satisfying. At the same time, many cultivators gradually came to their senses. Yin Ting came to the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom and personally issued a challenge to Su Zimo. It was probably not just for the Heavenly Slaughter and Earth Slaughter sword arts. More importantly, Su Zimo's strength was enough to warrant such treatment from Yin Ting. Tian Yuan from the Mountain and Sea Immortal Sect sighed and shook his head. Back then, I could tell that this kid was extraordinary. Who would have thought that I still underestimated him? Duke Yuan's face was ashen. In the blink of an eye, the Great Jin Celestial Empire lost 6 Executioner Earth Guards. Listening to the exclamations and praises of Su Zimo, he felt even more resentment in his heart. What are you so proud of? Duke Yuan's suddenly said. He looked around and raised his voice. A rank 8 Earth deity. Even if his primordial spirit has reached rank 1 heavenly deity, he would still be able to unleash a peerless divine skill. The consumption of his energy would be unimaginable. This Su Zimo is just an arrow at the end of its flight, a dying flash. In the end, Duke Yuan's ferocious gaze landed on the Qianquan Academy's elders. He gritted his teeth and said, it's too early for you to be happy. Bah! Elder Zhong spat and said, 18 peak earthly immortals from the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect have joined forces. Now they have been defeated by me, an 8th level earthly immortal from the Academy. How dare you bark here? Yuanzhua, you have embarrassed the Great Jin Celestial Empire and the Executioner Earth Guards. Elder He also laughed out loud. Duke Yuanzhua's face turned red after being scolded. He said resentfully, a cornered beast is still putting up a fight. I'll wait and see how long he can last. Although the Qianquan Academy's elders were happy to scold him, there was still a look of worry in their eyes. In fact, Duke Yuanzhua was right. When one's primordial spirit reached rank 1 heavenly deity, they would of course be able to unleash a peerless divine skill. However, the primordial spirit was only at rank 1 heavenly deity. Unleashing a peerless divine skill at rank 2 heavenly deity was too taxing on one's primordial spirit. It was too much of a burden. Immortal Taihua and Su Zimo were both unleashing peerless divine skills. However, the situation was completely different. Before Immortal Taihua made his move, he had been recuperating for a long time and was in peak condition. Su Zimo, on the other hand, had used up a lot of energy during his journey to obtain the treasures of the 4th heaven and unleashed many powerful mystic techniques. Just now, he had unleashed many more divine skills and mystic techniques, including the peerless divine skill, 3 heads and 6 arms. Even though he was a rank 1 heavenly deity in the primordial spirit realm, his energy had long been depleted. Meanwhile, the Great Jin Celestial Empire only had Han the Iron left. The Flying Immortal Sect still had Immortal Taihua and 4 other peak Earth immortals from the Flying Immortal Sect. Next, Su Zimo's situation would be even more difficult. He would most likely die. In the 9th heaven, Su Zimo's situation was better than what the elders of the Academy had expected. It was because his primordial spirit was too special. It was the product of the fusion of Qinglian's primordial spirit and the dragon phoenix's primordial spirit. It was extremely condensed and pure. Moreover, after unleashing the power of Six Fangs, the power of his primordial spirit skyrocketed. Although his primordial spirit was still at the first stage Heaven Immortal Realm, his power had already reached the second stage Heaven Immortal Realm. Along the way, Su Zimo had snatched the treasures of the fourth heaven and unleashed many mystic techniques, such as the Pentati Dao Fire and the Heavenly Slaying Sword Qi. Just now, he had unleashed many trump cards in the battle. The power of his primordial spirit and his primordial qi were extremely depleted. Even so, his primordial spirit still maintained its combat power and could at least unleash one more primordial spirit mystic technique. He's already at the end of his rope. Everyone, don't be afraid, Immortal Taihua said in a deep voice. If we join forces and attack him together, he will definitely die. Ha 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 ha. Su Zimo suddenly laughed out loud and looked at Immortal Taihua, who was not far away. His face was full of mockery as he said, "You want to send me on my way? Cultivators of the Flying Immortal Sect, listen up," Su Zimo said loudly. "Go back and tell Ming Yao that if she wants to send me Su Zimo on my way, ask her to come personally. Acheron's journey is too lonely. I don't mind letting Zither Immortal accompany me." Gasp! The crowd was in an uproar. Arrogant! Arrogant! This was simply blasphemy against Zither Immortal Ming Yao. This time, Fairy Ming Yao had invited the reincarnated immortal to join forces with the Dajin Immortal Kingdom to kill Su Zimo. Everyone could understand that he had resentment in his heart. However, even if he had resentment towards Zither Immortal, who would dare to openly oppose her? Even some immortal kings on the Divine Clouds continent were a little wary of Zither Immortal Ming Yao. In the eyes of many cultivators, Zither Immortal was a high and mighty fairy who could not be blasphemed. Now, Su Zimo actually asked Zither Immortal to personally appear in front of everyone and accompany him on the path of Acheron. Ignorant Junior. Heaven Immortal Bai Hai was furious. This time, even the perfected immortal Xieling was secretly speechless. With his status, he did not dare to say such words to Zither Immortal Ming Yao. Ha 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 ha. Only Yin Ting laughed unscrupulously and said, "Su Zimo, how dare you? I really like you more and more. I've long despised Zither Immortal. She's not worthy of being on the same level as my sister." Chapter 22-28. Su Zimo, you really don't know what's good for you. Immortal Taihua's expression was cold. Although he was a reincarnated perfected immortal, in his heart, Zither Immortal Ming Yao was still a fairy. Even in his previous life, when he saw Zither Immortal Ming Yao, he would be respectful. At least half of the cultivators in the Flying Immortal Sect were in love with Fairy Ming Yao. However, not many people dared to show it. Because in their hearts, they didn't deserve it at all. They didn't expect that Su Zimo would publicly blaspheme Zither Immortal Ming Yao today. This had completely touched Immortal Taihua's bottom line. "Su Zimo, let me tell you," Immortal Taihua said slowly, "there are some people you can't touch. Even if you blaspheme with your words or look at them, it's still a sin." "Is that so?" Su Zimo grinned and said with a cold gaze. "I also have something that you can't touch. If you touch it, you'll die." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Zimo's eyes lit up, and he frantically activated his essence spirit. His vast divine consciousness gathered and released an essence spirit secret technique. A palm-sized, ordinary-looking scale slowly floated out from between his eyebrows, exuding a terrifying aura. Reverse scale. Attack! Immortal Taihua yelled. His glabella flickered and released a ball of dazzling light. He also released an essence spirit secret technique and charged towards the reverse scale. The other 4 Earth Immortals of the Flying Immortal Sect had originally condensed their divine powers and were about to release them. However, Su Zimo released his essence spirit secret technique first. The 4 of them had no choice but to condense their divine consciousness and release their essence spirit secret techniques. A battle between essence spirits was too dangerous. If it wasn't necessary, no one would use their essence spirit secret techniques. For example, although the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal sect had suffered heavy losses and only had 6 people left, they still had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. Therefore, they didn't think of using their essence spirit secret techniques at all. Since the reverse scale had appeared, they could only release their essence spirit secret techniques to resist it. Han the Iron squinted slightly. In order to kill Su Zimo without fail, he had collected all the information about Su Zimo and studied it carefully. This was especially true for the Immortal Sect general election 1,000 years ago. According to his understanding, that essence spirit secret skill was extremely frightening and should not be touched if one's essence spirit realm was insufficient. Han the Iron hesitated and did not activate his essence soul secret technique. At this moment, Immortal Taihua's essence soul mystic technique collided with the reverse scale silently. However, the space where the two essence spirit secret skills collided shook violently in ripples that resembled water ripples spread in all directions. This was not an ordinary battle between essence spirits. These were two soul cores that had attained the heavenly immortal realm, and when they collided head-on, the might of the aftershock that erupted from them was obvious. Even the cultivators standing next to the steel felt a chill in their sea of consciousness. Many cultivators even retreated and distanced themselves from the battlefield with lingering fear. Feng Yi no longer had his eyes closed. Instead, he stared intently at the battlefield, observing every detail. He knew that no matter who the final victor was, that person would be his greatest opponent. The moment Immortal Taihua's essence soul mystic technique collided with the reverse scale, he suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis. It was as if death was about to descend in the next moment. All of a sudden, a strange power appeared in his sea of consciousness out of thin air, and shrouded his weak essence spirit. After releasing the supreme mystical power and the essence soul mystic technique, his essence spirit had already become extremely weak and could not resist the invasion of this strange power at all. Oh no! Immortal Taihua's expression changed drastically. Without thinking too much, he activated his essence spirit again, and a powerful energy wave burst out of his body. Majestic and vast vitality gushed out of Immortal Taihua's body. It was the supreme mystical power, endless growth. At the critical moment of life and death, Immortal Taihua used the last power of his essence spirit to release the second supreme mystical power. In fact, this was his greatest trump card against Feng Yi. In his initial plan, the battle for the first place of the Earth Roll would be between him and Feng Yi. If the two of them fought to the end and exhausted their qi, essence spirit, and essence qi, he would release the endless growth to recover a large amount of qi, essence spirit, and essence qi. There would be no suspense in this battle. However, he had never expected that he would use his greatest trump card in advance. He had no other choice. Boom! In his spiritual consciousness, Immortal Taihua's essence spirit was glowing with vitality, and it burst out with a terrifying divine consciousness to disperse the strange power derived from the reverse scale and escape the calamity. Don't touch that scale. At this moment, Immortal Taihua seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly yelled to remind them. Unfortunately, it was already too late. The essence soul mystic techniques of the 4 Earth Immortals of the Flying Immortal sect collided with the reverse scale one after another. In their opinion, most of the power of the reverse scale had been blocked by Immortal Taihua. Their essence soul mystic techniques were enough to destroy the reverse scale and rush straight into Su Zimo's spiritual consciousness to kill his essence spirit. However, when their essence soul mystic techniques collided with the reverse scale, their expressions instantly froze, and their eyes glazed over. The vitality in their bodies was rapidly draining. The reverse scale could not withstand it, and had already shattered. In the spiritual consciousness of the 4 Earth Immortals of the Flying Immortal sect, their essence spirits were all destroyed. The 4 of them were intact, and fell to the ground weakly. They were already dead. One essence soul mystic technique killed another 4 people. In just a moment, only Immortal Taihua and Han the Iron were left of the 18 peak Earth Immortals. The encirclement had been broken. After releasing the reverse scale, Su Zimo's body swayed slightly and his face turned pale. The 6 divine elephant tusks behind him quietly retreated. The light between his eyebrows became extremely dim. After using so many trump cards consecutively, even Qinglian's true body could not withstand it, and felt a little dizzy. Not to mention the cultivators in the fifth heaven, even the people in the square could see that Su Zimo's essence spirit was already exhausted. The power of his essence spirit was exhausted, and his essence chi was exhausted. He could not use all his divine powers, mystic techniques, and immortal techniques. This also meant that Su Zimo would be at the mercy of others. His life and death would be in the hands of others. Sigh, what a pity. Someone sighed with pity. He managed to survive until now under the siege of the Dajin immortal nation, and the flying immortal sect, and even killed 16 peak earth immortals. He's already famous enough. That's right. With such combat strength, it's not an exaggeration to rank him first on the earth roll. But since ancient times, there have been so many geniuses who died prematurely. Who would remember them? In the square, many cultivators looked at the figure who was fighting alone in the ninth heaven and sighed. That figure looked a little lonely, a little pitiful, and even a little tragic. Although Han the Iron did not release his essence soul mystic technique, he could sense that Su Zimo was weak. Immediately, his body flashed, and he sped towards Su Zimo. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of Su Zimo. Such a rare and fleeting opportunity was something that he would absolutely not let go of. The error-free chapters of Eternal Holy King will continue to be updated in the forum. There are no advertisements in the forum. Please bookmark and recommend the forum. If you like Eternal Holy King, please bookmark Eternal Holy King. Chapter 22-29. Han the Iron knew very well. Even if the power of Su Zimo's essence spirit was exhausted, and he could no longer release his mystical powers or mystic techniques, his physical body and melee combat power were extremely terrifying. Therefore, Han the Iron did not hold back this time, and almost released all his trump cards. Ice Spike. Han the Iron's glabella opened, and his massive divine consciousness continuously condensed, forming a sharp and cold spike that stabbed towards Su Zimo. Just now, he did not release his essence spirit mystic technique to avoid the calamity. When Su Zimo's essence spirit was at its weakest, he released this essence spirit mystic technique, which was fatal. Eyes of Ice. At the same time, Han the Iron released the powerful ocular technique that he had cultivated. The temperature between heaven and earth plummeted. 2 streaks of frost burst out of Han the Iron's eyes, and almost instantly, they arrived in front of Su Zimo. Ice Seal. Han the Iron roared and released another great mystical power. Under the activation of his essence spirit and ice chi and blood, the power of this great mystical power was almost comparable to that of a supreme mystical power. In the end, Han the Iron's chi and blood surged and cold air surged between his hands, condensing into a huge ice blade that he slashed towards Su Zimo. Han the Iron was ready to engage in melee combat, but he released his essence spirit mystic technique, ocular technique, and mystical powers to complement it. The Flying Immortal Sect and the Dajin Immortal Kingdom had already suffered heavy losses. He would not allow any more unforeseen events to happen. He would not give Su Zimo any chance or hope of escaping. On the other side, Immortal Tai Hua released eternal vitality, and the power of his essence spirit recovered. When he saw this scene, he did not miss the opportunity. He activated his essence spirit, and released the second essence spirit mystic technique. Whoosh! An essence spirit sword pierced through the air, and pierced towards the back of Su Zimo's head. At this moment, the world seemed to have come to a standstill. Inside and outside the 9 heavens, countless cultivators watched this scene with bated breath. There were indeed only 2 people left from the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect, but their combat power was ranked in the top 10 of the Earth roll. The joint attack of the 2 was even more terrifying than the joint attack of 18 Earth Immortals just now. Under such circumstances, no one believed that Su Zimo could survive. This was a dead-end situation that would definitely kill him. You're still far from being able to kill me, Su Zimo hollered, and a majestic aura suddenly burst out of his body. It was full of vitality, and it was even greater than Immortal Taihua's aura just now. His entire body seemed to have recovered. Peerless divine ability, endless growth. Waves of cheers erupted from the square. The crowd, which had just quieted down, once again burst into an uproar. Endless vitality was Qinglian's natal mystique. Su Zimo had already comprehended it when he was in the lower realm. When Qinglian's true body released this peerless divine ability, the effect was even more shocking. In almost the blink of an eye, Su Zimo's primordial spirit had already recovered to its peak. Vitality surged, and Han the Iron's great divine ability, Ice Seal, instantly dissipated. Ice Seal was only a great divine ability. No matter how powerful it was, it couldn't freeze Qinglian's true body when she released endless growth. Su Zimo ignored Immortal Taihua's essence soul mystic technique, and suddenly turned around to look at Han the Iron, who was rushing over. Crack, crack, crack. The power of the Eye of Ice was the first to arrive. Wherever the eye technique passed, it left a white frost mark in the void. Su Zimo didn't dodge. His right eye suddenly became dazzling and burst out with a dazzling brilliance like the sun. Candlelight Eye. The candlelight stone had already fused into Su Zimo's right eye. This eye technique was full of yang energy. The moment the power of the Eye of Ice collided with it, it began to melt. It couldn't resist at all. Boom. The brilliance of the candlelight shot straight in, and instantly reached Han the Iron's face. Han the Iron rushed over at his maximum speed. He didn't expect such a change at all. Coupled with the instant release of the eye technique, it was too late for him to dodge. He could only try his best to tilt his head. Poof! Although it avoided the vital point between his brows, the beam of light still entered his left eye and pierced through it, creating a hole. Not a single drop of blood flowed out. The moment blood appeared, it was burned by the brilliance of the candlelight. After colliding with the Eye of Ice, the power of the candlelight eye was greatly depleted as well. Therefore, it did not kill Han the Iron directly and merely blinded him. Of course, with the remnant power of the candlelight, Han the Iron would have to recuperate for a long time before he could recover. What a pity! A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. The nether fluorescent stone in his left eye had once absorbed a large amount of dark power in the Emperor's tomb. Now that it was dormant, it could not be activated. Otherwise, Han the Iron would be killed on the spot by his nether fluorescent eye. Han the Iron was indeed the commander of the Executioner Earth Guards. Although he was severely injured and his facial features were contorted in pain, he did not make a sound. He widened his remaining eye with a ferocious glint. Coupled with his essence spirit secret skill, he raised the ice blade in his hand and slashed towards Su Zimo. Immortal Taihua was behind Su Zimo's back. In Han the Iron's opinion, even if Su Zimo's essence spirit recovered to its peak, he would not be able to release his reverse scale again and defend against the essence spirit secret skill of him and Immortal Taihua. Relidermic Seal. Su Zimo activated his essence spirit and chanted the sutra silently. Golden light flickered between his glabella, and an incomparably sacred Sanskrit flew out, emitting a golden light that seemed to be able to suppress all evil and transcend all living beings. Su Zimo's second essence spirit secret skill was released. The Relidermic Seal did not fight against Immortal Taihua's essence spirit sword. Instead, it collided with Han the Iron's ice blade. Crack! The two essence spirit secret skills collided in midair. Han the Iron's body trembled, and the light between his glabella flickered. He suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a large mouthful of blood. His essence spirit realm was not high enough, and he still could not resist the Relidermic Seal. Although he did not die in this essence spirit battle, his essence spirit was injured. On the other side, Su Zimo touched his glabella with his left hand and activated a secret skill. He pulled out a long whip that was flickering with lightning arcs from his glabella and struck it towards the descending essence spirit sword. The third essence spirit secret skill. Many cultivators in the square were horrified. Most ordinary cultivators could cultivate an essence spirit secret technique, and those who could cultivate two were already rare paragons. No matter how much they cultivated, it was not necessary for them, and they did not have the energy to do so. The power of the essence spirit was limited, and no one could continuously release essence spirit secret skills. Now Su Zimo actually released 3 essence spirit secret skills. Under the terrifying attacks of Immortal Taihua and Han the Iron, Su Zimo did not die, and even launched a powerful counterattack. The means displayed in this battle were far beyond the knowledge of ordinary Earth immortals. Smack! The sword and whip collided, creating waves of divine consciousness. The essence spirit realm of the two of them was similar, and there was no winner in this essence spirit battle. However, this time, there was a hint of retreat in Immortal Taihua's eyes. Chapter 2230. Immortal Taihua wasn't afraid. He just didn't want to continue fighting with Su Zimo in the ninth heaven. Su Zimo's strength was far beyond his imagination. At the very most, he was shocked, but not to the extent where he was afraid. Both sides had used up most of their trump cards in the battle. Now Su Zimo had released the supreme mystical power, eternal vitality, and his essence energy had recovered to the peak. Even if he continued to fight with Su Zimo here, Immortal Taihua was not confident that he could kill him. Instead, he might as well avoid him for now. It wouldn't be too late for him to attack when he left the ninth heaven, and could use Dharma treasures. He had a few powerful Dharma treasures in his storage bag that could significantly increase his combat power. At the very least, he had prepared some pills that he could consume. After all, there were many restrictions in the ninth heaven, and his combat power could not be unleashed to the peak. "I'm not afraid of him," Immortal Taihua muttered in his heart again, as if he was trying to strengthen his belief. At that thought, Immortal Taihua gave up on Su Zimo and turned around to leave. On the other hand, as the commander of the Execution Earth Guards, Han Tai obeyed the orders of Duke Yuanzhua and would definitely not retreat. Even if he was blinded in one eye and his essence soul was injured, he would not be afraid. However, the power of the long saber in his hand was greatly reduced after being severely injured. Su Zimo reached out with his bare hands and crushed the long saber. At the same time, Su Zimo raised his other hand and unleashed the Great Chaos Essence Palm, slamming it down on Han Tai's head. Han Tai raised his other arm in an attempt to block it. Crack! However, the power of the Great Chaos Essence Palm was so ferocious that it directly broke Han Tai's arm. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, and blood chi filled the air. The huge power did not stop at all, and was still pressing down on Han Tai. "Tai Hua you!" At this moment, Han Tai saw Immortal Taihua turn around and leave with one eye. He couldn't help but fly into a rage. Immortal Taihua's action was equivalent to selling him to Su Zimo. At the critical juncture of life and death, Han Tai also had a strong desire to survive. He suddenly raised his head, leaned back, and fell. This time, he narrowly avoided his vital parts. Bang! The Great Chaos Essence Palm pressed down on Han Tai's arm and landed on his chest. Accompanied by a horrifying sound of bones cracking, a palm-sized hole in Han Tai's chest instantly. Unfortunately, Su Zimo's power of essence spirit was exhausted earlier on, and the divine power of 6 fangs and 3 heads and 6 arms dissipated as well. If not for that, his strength would have increased by 6 times. Coupled with the 3 heads and 6 arms, he would have been able to kill Han the Iron the moment he got close to him. Of course, this slap almost took away half of Han the Iron's life. Thump. TSSTSTS was ST. S. S his. T his 2. S. T. ST. ST test. S's. T. Su Zimo's eyes were full of murderous intent. The people from the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect could live, except for Immortal Taihua. He killed Yi Fei, so Su Zimo wanted him to pay with his life. If it were before, Su Zimo had many secret movement techniques. He would be confident enough to kill Han Tai first, and then chase after Immortal Taihua. But now, he had already released his secret movement techniques, and couldn't use them in a short period of time. Now he had let Immortal Taihua leave first. If he went to chase after Han Tai and came back, Immortal Taihua would probably have already escaped. The 9 heavens was too big. Trying to find someone who was bent on hiding here was like finding a needle in a haystack. It was simply impossible. If he left the 9th heaven and tried to kill Immortal Taihua, under the watchful eyes of many heaven immortals, he didn't know what would happen. "I have to keep him here." At this thought, Su Zimo gave up on Han Tai, turned around, and chased after Immortal Taihua in the distance. The dozens of cultivators next to the Earth-Roll's stone tablet were dumbfounded. The alliance between the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect ended in such a way. Han Tai was seriously injured and Immortal Tai Hua escaped. Su Zimo strode forward with a murderous aura and fixed his eyes on the figure in the distance. Obviously, he didn't intend to let Immortal Tai Hua go. Han Tai clutched his chest and coughed up blood, looking miserable. Originally, he was already a dead man. If Su Zimo chased after him, he wouldn't be able to last more than 3 rounds. He didn't expect that Immortal Tai Hua's departure would save his life. Han Tai looked at Immortal Tai Hua's back and smiled mockingly. Then, he looked at the tall Earth-Roll's stone tablet not far away, and looked at the name he had left on the stone tablet. The mockery in his eyes intensified. In his current state, he no longer had the chance to compete for the Earth-Roll. His essence soul was injured, his physical body was severely injured, and one of his eyes was blind. It was unknown if he could break through to the Heaven Immortal realm in the future. Han Tai looked lonely. He turned around and walked towards the teleportation array in the direction of the 4th heaven. If he wanted to save his life, he couldn't stay here. Regardless of whether Su Zimo could kill Immortal Tai Hua or not, he would definitely die when he returned. He could only save his life by going to the 4th heaven and finding a place to hide. Beside the Earth-Roll's stone tablet, Feng Yin, who was just watching the battle, suddenly moved and chased after Su Zimo and Immortal Tai Hua. Up until now, even he was curious about the outcome of the battle. Yu Feng, Yunlei, and the others also chased after them. Xia Yun protected Princess Qi Hong and didn't chase after them. He sighed and said, "Qi Hong, your academy has really produced a ruthless person this time. Don't worry. Although the restrictions on Princess Qi Hong's body were not lifted, she could still speak." She said hatefully, "Junior brother Su will never let Tai Hua off. He will definitely avenge senior brother Yi." "It's difficult." Xia Yun shook his head slightly and said, "Su Zimo's combat power might be better than Immortal Tai Hua's, but if Immortal Tai Hua keeps avoiding the battle and wants to escape, he won't stand a chance." Princess Qi Hong was silent. She knew in her heart that Xia Yun was right. After all, Su Zimo was alone. If Immortal Tai Hua wanted to escape, Su Zimo wouldn't be able to stop him. In the square, many cultivators were horrified when they saw this scene. At this point, this battle had already exceeded everyone's expectations. Chapter 2231. In the 4th heaven, the gigantic willow tree not far away from the teleportation formation was undergoing a shocking transformation. No one knew what was happening, but countless willow leaves were turning yellow at a speed visible to the naked eye. The drooping willow branches were also withering rapidly. The ancient and rough bark on the willow tree was peeling off bit by bit as well. However, the vitality within the willow tree was getting stronger. This disciple of the academy has profited from a disaster. This is a fortune. The perfected immortal Xia Ling lamented. His cultivation realm was the highest among everyone present, and his insight far surpassed others as well. He could tell that after the primordial spirit of this disciple of the academy had fused with the primordial spirit of the giant willow, his primordial spirit realm had probably broken through to the heavenly immortal realm. His body had also been reborn, and his future was limitless. The potential of this disciple of the academy could be seen at a glance. Although he had joined the Qianquan Academy, he would at most be a heaven immortal in the future. But now that he had obtained such a great opportunity, his potential was unimaginable. This time around, Su Zimo had obtained the most treasures in the 9th heaven. Next, the disciple of the Qianquan Academy had obtained the most benefits. What a good method! The perfected immortal Xia Ling could not help but sigh when he thought about how this disciple of the academy had something to do with Su Zimo. Initially, Xia Ling was somewhat displeased with Su Zimo for seizing the foundation treasure of the 4th heaven. But now that he had witnessed the battle just now, Xia Ling thought about it and felt that it was nothing much for him to take away the treasure. He could take it as giving him a favor. At the very least, it was not a bad thing for the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom to be on good terms with this lad. Not long after, the willow tree had already completed its transformation. The gigantic willow tree had disappeared and was replaced by a willow sapling that looked thin and weak. The tree trunk was only as thick as an arm, and a few willow branches drooped down. They were slender and weak, and seemed like they could be snapped by a gust of wind. The willow sapling began to sway continuously and became more intense. Aya! Not long after, the willow tree let out a slightly immature voice of a human. In a spurt of energy, it actually pulled itself out of the soil, exposing its roots to the outside. After this action, the willow tree seemed to have exhausted a lot of energy and stood in place to rest. After pausing for a moment, the willow tree's body gradually changed. Many roots gathered together, and the trunk evolved. Under the gazes of many cultivators, the willow sapling disappeared and was replaced by an 8 or 9-year-old child. One could vaguely see Lu Ping's appearance between his brows. The child was wearing a small green robe, and his hair was naturally combed into a few small braids that swayed slightly like willow branches. After the child transformed into his own body, he looked down and was stunned on the spot. So short. The child looked at his fair and tender hands and was shocked again. So small. The child hurriedly conjured up a sparkling mirror. He glanced at the mirror and was scared silly. Then he smashed the mirror with his fist. Fuck, the child cursed. However, his voice was young and tender, so when he said this foul language, it sounded neither fish nor fowl. Junior brother Su, you've made me suffer. The child was Lu Ping, who devoured the essence spirit of the gigantic willow. He wanted to cry but no tears came out. He had indeed inherited the body of the gigantic willow and was reborn, fusing perfectly with this body. However, for some reason, he returned to his childhood appearance by accident. Lu Ping hurriedly checked his weak body. Lu Ping was slightly stunned. His cultivation realm did not regress. His essence spirit realm had actually broken through to the heaven immortal realm. Furthermore, although this body was small, the vitality and power it contained were extremely terrifying. It had perfectly inherited the power of the gigantic willow. This, Lu Ping clenched his small fists in disbelief and muttered to himself. Although my body has become smaller, it seems to be stronger than before? Oh no, junior brother Su is in danger. Lu Ping suddenly thought of Su Zimo and hurriedly ran towards the teleportation formation. The braids on his head were almost flying up. After arriving at the teleportation formation, Lu Ping did not hesitate and directly ascended to the 5th heaven. After arriving at the 5th heaven, Lu Ping identified the direction and was about to run in the direction of the Earth Roll Stone tablet. However, he suddenly frowned. Not far away, there was a figure clutching his chest as he staggered towards this place. This person's face was pale, and his body was covered in blood. He was blind in one eye and his body emitted a faint smell of blood. He looked extremely pathetic. On the iron? Lu Ping's eyes widened, and he almost did not recognize him. Compared to the cold and ruthless great commander of the Execution Earth Guards, Han the Iron in front of him was panicking like a stray dog. He was depressed and looked miserable. Lu Ping did not know how Han the Iron had ended up in such a state. However, when he recalled how Han the Iron had chased after him previously, he could not help but laugh coldly. He stepped forward and blocked Han the Iron's path. Han the Iron stopped in his tracks and rolled his one eye. He rolled his eyes at the child in front of him. This child looked somewhat familiar. However, his essence spirit was injured and his mind was in a mess. Coupled with the fact that he was severely injured by Su Zimo this time round, the blow was too great. Without thinking too much, his expression darkened as he said coldly, "Where did this kid come from? Scram! Don't block my way." Even though he had been severely injured by Su Zimo, and his essence spirit was injured, an ordinary earth immortal was no match for him. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. He was the great commander of the Execution Earth Guards, and had countless means of killing. Kid. Lu Ping stared and gritted his teeth. Open your dog eyes and look at who I am. Lu Ping's words were quite imposing, but they were said in a childish voice, and did not have much effect. Brat, you don't know what's good for you. Han the Iron did not take Lu Ping seriously at all. He reached out his hand and grabbed Lu Ping's head. Lu Ping's head was not even as big as his palm. Although he could not use his essence spirit to activate his divine powers, he could kill most Earth immortals with just his body. This action affected the injury on his chest. Han the Iron endured the excruciating pain and did not make a sound. His palm was enough to crush this kid's head. Lu Ping was shocked. He had seen Han the Iron's means and did not dare to face Han the Iron's physical strength head-on. Lu Ping was about to activate the Academy's divine powers to resist Han the Iron's palm when a strange memory appeared in his mind. For some reason he shook his head lightly. The few braids on his head seemed to have a mind of their own. They suddenly transformed into a few slender willow branches and whipped toward Han the Iron's palm. Piak piak piak. There were a few crisp sounds. There were a few bloody marks on Han the Iron's arm. These willow branches wrapped around Han the Iron's arm and tightened. Lu Ping was shocked to find that these willow branches had dug into Han the Iron's flesh so deep that his bones could be seen. Thick red blood flowed out with a bone-chilling coldness. However, these willow branches were not afraid of the cold and were not stained by blood. They were still green. If Han the Iron continued to exert force, his arm might be broken by these willow branches. Chapter 2232. Han the Iron grunted, and his expression changed drastically. When Lu Ping saw this, he was shocked. He did not expect that the inconspicuous braids on his head would be so powerful that they could even break through Han the Iron's physical defense. Lu Ping did not know what was going on either. He only recalled a memory and subconsciously controlled the willow branches. He had fused perfectly with the essence spirit of the gigantic willow. Not only did he inherit the gigantic willow's body, but he also inherited its many techniques and memories. He did not even have to cultivate and could release the techniques of the gigantic willow at will. However, he had just transformed into Chungren, so he was still a little unfamiliar with using many of his techniques. For example, he could scatter the willow branches. One of them would be enough to lock Han the Iron's arm, while the rest of the willow branches could be used to attack Han the Iron. Han the Iron was in an extremely miserable state. His other arm was badly mutilated, and his bones were broken by Su Zimo's great chaos essence palm. Right now, his arm was bound by Lu Ping and could not move at all. It was almost broken. His essence spirit was injured, and he could not use the mystique of regrowing a broken arm. He could only consume many elixirs and rely on his blood qi to recover slowly. He did not expect to bump into this kid who appeared out of nowhere and restrained him again, worsening his injuries. Even though his body was broken, Han the Iron's eyes did not show any signs of submission. He was still ferocious as he prepared to counterattack. He could accept that Su Zimo had beaten him to such a state. After all, he was not strong enough. However, he was the great commander of the Executioner Earth Guards. How could he be subdued by a mere child? The most important thing was that he was well aware of the top experts who had entered the 9 heavens. There was no such child. Han the Iron's left arm was crippled, and his right arm was bound by the willow branches. The only parts he could move were his legs. After Lu Ping fused with the gigantic willow, the power of his essence spirit increased tremendously. His spirit consciousness reached the heaven immortal realm, and his senses were extremely sharp. Lu Ping had already sensed Han the moment he made a move. Hey! Lu Ping was still extremely wary of Han the Iron in his heart. Both parties were so close that he could not release his other techniques in time. He could only throw a punch instinctively and shout. Han the Iron had just lifted his leg when Lu Ping's fist landed on his chest. This punch was too fast. Puff! With just one punch, Han the Iron's chest was pierced through, and his heart exploded. A small, chubby fist protruded out of Han the Iron's back, covered in blood. Lu Ping and Han the Iron were stunned at the same time, their eyes filled with disbelief. They did not expect the punch to severely injure Han the Iron. With his heart exploding, Han the Iron's qi and blood drained rapidly. He looked dispirited. Coupled with the fact that his Yuan spirit was injured, he had lost almost all of his combat power. This body is too strong. Lu Ping's heart thumped wildly as he looked agitated. In fact, after inheriting Giant Willow's body, although his physical strength was strong, it was not at this level. However, Han the Iron's chest had been shattered by Su Zimo's great chaotic essence palm. His flesh and bones were almost rotting inside. Only then would Lu Ping's punch be able to penetrate through his chest. Blood kept flowing out of Han the Iron's mouth. His body could not hold on any longer. He stood in front of Lu Ping, his body swaying as he looked down at Lu Ping's face. His pupils constricted gradually. Ha! Ha! Han the Iron tried to open his mouth, as if he wanted to say something. However, blood kept flowing out, and his words were choppy and unclear. It's you. Han the Iron recognized Lu Ping's face. However, he did not expect that this disciple of the academy, who he had hunted down and should have died, would become like this. How could he suddenly have such powerful strength? You recognized me. Very good. Lu Ping gradually calmed down and retracted his fist. Han the Iron could not hold on any longer. With a plop, he knelt in front of Lu Ping, his face pale. Speak. Lu Ping's small hand grabbed Han the Iron's collar and said sternly, What did you do to my junior brother Su? Is junior brother Su still alive? Han the Iron could no longer speak. Blood kept flowing out of the hole in his chest and mouth. Lu Ping frowned secretly. After hesitating for a long time, he still did not dare to kill him. The one who killed Yi Fei was immortal Taihua. Han the Iron could not be blamed. Most importantly, he was just an ordinary disciple of the academy. He had too many concerns, and did not have the courage to kill the commander of the Executioner Earth Guards. Of course, if Su Zimo was besieged to death by Han the Iron and the others, he would kill Han the Iron to avenge his junior brother Su. There was another point. If he did not kill Han the Iron, he could use his life to threaten the other Earth Immortals of the Dajin Celestial Kingdom. That might help junior brother Su. At that thought, Lu Ping grabbed Han the Iron's collar and dragged him towards the Earth Roll Stone tablet. In the square, Duke Yuanzhua and Heaven Immortal Bai Hai's expressions were extremely ugly. The two forces had suffered great losses this time. They had mobilized so many people, and even invited a reincarnated immortal. Not only did they fail to kill Su Zimo, but they were also defeated by him. After today, the Dajin Celestial Kingdom and the Flying Celestial Sect would become the laughingstock of the Divine Clouds continent. The two of them looked gloomy and glanced at the Qingquan Academy from time to time. They were angry but could not vent their anger. Do the two of you have something to say? Elder Zhong stroked his beard and looked at Duke Yuanzhua and Heaven Immortal Bai Hai from the corner of his eyes. He said slowly, Just now, someone said that if the Earth Immortals of the Dajin Celestial Kingdom and the Flying Celestial Sect died in the 9 heavens, you wouldn't say anything. They can only blame themselves for not being skilled enough. You're not the only one who remembers. All the cultivators here heard it clearly. Elder, he added from the side. Duke Yuanzhua was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Heaven Immortal Bai Hai gritted his teeth and said, Su Zimo from the Qingquan Academy is too cruel. Immortal Taihua from the Flying Celestial Sect only killed one disciple of your academy. Su Zimo has already killed a total of 16 of our Earth Immortals. Good job. Elder Zhong thought of Yi Fei's tragic death, and still could not let it go. He said loudly, Ha 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 ha. Yin Ting, who was next to him, also laughed. What a joke. The two of you joined forces to kill someone, but were killed instead. How dare you accuse the other party of being too cruel? Yuanzhua Bai Hai, you've embarrassed the Dajin Celestial Kingdom and the Flying Celestial Sect. Heaven Immortal Bai Hai could not say a word after being scolded by Yin Ting. He could only grit his teeth and suppress the resentment in his heart. Many cultivators in the crowd were whispering and looking in the direction of the Dajin Celestial Kingdom and the Flying Celestial Sect with disdain. Bai Hai, you'd better worry about that reincarnated immortal of your sect. Yin Ting took a sip of wine and said calmly, Heaven Immortal Bai Hai sneered. What? If Immortal Taihua avoids the battle, do you think Su Zimo can stop him in the 9 heavens? As soon as Heaven Immortal Bai Hai finished speaking, Su Zimo attacked again in the 9 heavens. They did not expect him to die in Qingquan Academy. This matter caused a huge commotion in the Pang clan. Pang Yu's death was strange. He had been hit by the power of time and died from the exhaustion of his lifespan. However, according to the information they received, the person who killed Pang Yu was a Heaven Immortal from Qingquan Academy. The power of time that erupted was much stronger than Su Zimo's current display. Heaven Immortal Bai Hai heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Immortal Tai Hua was fine. Then he sneered. You want to kill a reincarnated immortal of my flying immortal sect, with just a great divine ability? What a joke! As soon as he finished speaking, Su Zimo attacked again. The gray mist in Su Zimo's hands kept surging and changing. It condensed into a second gray saber. With a whoosh, it tore through the air and slashed at Immortal Tai Hua. What's going on? This kid is actually using the same divine ability consecutively? Exclamations came from the crowd. Even the many heaven immortals present were shocked. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Swoosh. Immediately after, another saber of time condensed and slashed at Immortal Tai Hua again. Look, the third gray saber. The fourth. The fifth. Many cultivators were shocked and looked at the scene in the 9 heavens in disbelief. The great divine ability, Saber of Time, was actually transformed from Baron. The power of the Saber of Time originated from the gray mist between Su Zimo's palms. As long as there was enough gray mist and essence soul, he could keep using the Saber of Time. Such a method seemed terrifying, but when one reached the Heaven Immortal realm, it would become extremely useless. That was because no matter how many Sabers of Time were released, they would not be able to defeat a peerless divine ability. However, in a battle between Earth Immortals, this kind of continuous Saber of Time was a huge threat to any Earth Immortal. Time was like a saber that aged people. Immortal Tai Hua did not dare to underestimate each saber. If he wanted to resist, he could only continuously release divine abilities and mystic techniques to fight against the Saber of Time. In this way, the battle between the two sides quietly changed. Both of them were peerless geniuses among the Earth Immortals. But in this battle, there was no technique to speak of. It turned into a battle of essence soul and essence chi. Whoever's essence soul could not hold on first would die. Whoever's essence chi was exhausted first would die. Sigh. The perfected immortal Xie Ling suddenly sighed with a complicated expression. He looked at the green-robed cultivator in the 9 heavens and murmured softly, "This kid is too terrifying." Xie Ling was not only referring to Su Zimo's trump cards. It was also because of Su Zimo's control and judgment of the situation. Just as everyone thought before, if Immortal Tai Hua avoided the battle and wanted to escape, Su Zimo would not be able to make him stay, let alone kill him. But now, Immortal Tai Hua had no choice but to fight. Not only that, this battle had also turned into a battle of attrition. There were no techniques, no close-range attacks. Only the most violent and simple head-on battle that was constantly exhausting. If Immortal Tai Hua could not hold on and exhausted his essence chi and the power of his essence soul, he would really have no chance to escape. This might be the only chance to make Immortal Tai Hua stay. And this opportunity did not exist originally. It was created by Su Zimo, who forced Immortal Tai Hua into a desperate situation. As a reincarnated perfected immortal, who had just returned from cultivation, he encountered such a ruthless person, who was leading him by the nose from the beginning to the end. Many heavenly immortal realm experts sighed with emotion when they saw this scene. When Immortal Tai Hua sensed the gray sabers flying towards him from behind, his expression changed in shock. He did not dare to stop. He could only frantically activate his essence soul and release many mystic techniques to resist the power of the Saber of Time. Great Tearing Technique, Gouchen Slash, Armor Breaking Seal, Sun Saber. In an extremely short period of time, Su Zimo released 36 sabers of time. Immortal Tai Hua's long hair danced and his eyes were bright. He also pushed his essence soul to the limit and released 36 different mystic techniques. In an instant, the mystic techniques collided, shaking heaven and earth, and changing the weather. Chapter 2234. Many cultivators felt their blood boiling as they watched the battle. One had to know that after an ordinary cultivator released a divine ability, if they wanted to release another divine ability, there would be a gap in between to allow their primordial spirit to recover and recover. Otherwise, the burden on the primordial spirit would be too great, and the damage would be severe. The more condensed the primordial spirit was, the shorter the interval would be. For example, people like Yin Ting Tai Hua, and Feng Ying could release multiple divine powers consecutively, and their primordial spirits could withstand it. Now the crowd had the opportunity to see such intensive attacks and the eruption of divine powers. They were all exhilarated. This is what a peerless expert is like. The killing power of an Earth Immortal expert can reach such a level. Immortal Tai Hua has reincarnated and has the imprint of his previous life. It's understandable that his primordial spirit is more condensed. Su Zimo is from the lower realm, but he can still fight against Immortal Tai Hua, and his primordial spirit hasn't collapsed. Exclamations, shouts, and all sorts of exclamations were intertwined and turned into a buzzing noise that echoed in the square. "Brother Su, you're really good," Xie Qingqing said. "The reason why reincarnated immortals are so powerful is that they have cultivated for a lifetime. Although they have only recovered some of their memories, their combat experience, combat skills, judgment, control, and knowledge of the situation are far superior to their peers. Now that Brother Su has forced Immortal Tai Hua into such a state, all his experience and skills are useless. He can only continue to fight with Brother Su. Your Highness, who do you think will win this battle?" Su Xiaotian certainly hoped that Su Zimo would win, but he was still a little worried. After all, Su Zimo had fought many battles along the way and had consumed too much energy. Moreover, his opponent was a reincarnated immortal and could not be underestimated. "It's hard to say," Xie Qingqing pondered and said. "Both of their primordial spirits have reached the level of a first-stage heaven immortal. They should still have trump cards that they haven't used yet. If they use this trump card, I'm afraid the outcome will be decided." In the 9 heavens, the two sides fought in such a way. In a very short period of time, the battle quickly reached its climax. After 36 slashes, Su Zimo's eyes lit up, and his aura became stronger and stronger. The more he fought, the braver he became. There were no signs of him stopping. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In front of Su Zimo, gray fog swirled and changed. Several sabers of time condensed once more, ready to strike. Su Zimo. Immortal Tai Hua suddenly stopped in his tracks, turned around abruptly, and said loudly, "If you want to fight, let's fight outside the 9 heavens and on the earth roll. How about that?" Although Immortal Tai Hua's voice was loud, his tone was weaker than Lin Fan's. "I want your life now." Su Zimo looked at Immortal Tai Hua coldly and said calmly. Immortal Tai Hua stared at Su Zimo with a ferocious expression and said sternly, "Su Zimo, don't push your luck. If you really force me into a corner and fight to the death, you won't be able to survive either." Of course, Immortal Tai Hua still had some trump cards. However, if he were to use this trump card, he was not confident that he could kill Su Zimo. If he failed, he might die here. Therefore, Immortal Tai Hua did not dare to use this trump card. Fight to the death. Su Zimo was unmoved and looked fearless. In fact, he ignored Immortal Tai Hua and directly released the saber of time that condensed in front of him to slash at Immortal Tai Hua. After releasing 36 mystical powers and mystic techniques consecutively, Immortal Tai Hua's essence spirit could no longer take it and was aching faintly. If this continued, he would be exhausted to death. "Go to hell!" Immortal Tai Hua shouted and frantically activated his essence spirit. The essence chi in his hands quickly drew mysterious and complicated runes in midair that were full of murderous intent. The terrifying power of the mystical powers spread and surged toward Su Zimo. "Immortal slaying talisman," perfected Immortal Xia Ling exclaimed softly. This was a peerless mystical power of the Flying Immortal sect. Once released, it could cut off the opponent's vitality and was extremely terrifying. "The outcome is about to be decided," Xie Qingqing murmured softly without looking away. Countless cultivators also held their breaths and watched the scene in the 9 heavens. After releasing this peerless mystical powers, Immortal Tai Hua's essence spirit instantly became extremely weak, and his face turned pale. Poof, poof, poof. The immortal slaying talisman collided with the sabers of time in midair. The sabers of time could not withstand it at all and collapsed. "You finally attacked." Su Zimo looked at the incoming immortal slaying talisman without any fear. Instead, there was a hint of mockery in his eyes, as though he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Bang! The immortal slaying talisman was imprinted on Su Zimo's chest, and a tremendous power surged into the body of Qinglian's true body instantly, destroying a large amount of vitality. Her flesh, bones and organs were severely injured, and her vitality was draining rapidly. However, the vitality of the 10th grade Qinglian's true body was far beyond that of other living beings. It was vast and unimaginable. If this peerless mystical powers were to land on the bodies of dragons, they might even be killed. However, Su Zimo relied on the powerful self-recovery ability of the Qinglian's true body to survive. Although the vitality in his body was weak, it was recovering slowly. Probably only the 10th grade Qinglian's true body could withstand a peerless mystical powers head-on without dying. Of course, more importantly, immortal Tai Hua's essence soul realm was only at the first stage heaven immortal realm, and could not unleash the full power of the immortal slaying talisman. If a level 9 heaven immortal released this peerless mystical powers, even the 10th grade Qinglian's true body would be shattered into pieces. Moreover, immortal Tai Hua had already exchanged 36 mystical powers with Su Zimo, and his essence soul was weak. The power of this peerless mystical powers was reduced by another level. It collided with the saber of time, and its power was reduced again. When it landed on Su Zimo's body, it was no longer much of a threat. Everything was under Su Zimo's control. He's not dead. Immortal Tai Hua's eyes narrowed. He saw that although Su Zimo's body was swaying slightly, his vitality was weak, and he coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood. His vitality was not cut off. Moreover, his vitality was recovering rapidly. You won't have the chance to reincarnate. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he said indifferently. He activated his essence soul, and activated his mystical powers. Across the void, he pointed at immortal Tai Hua and uttered 4 words. Fleeting youth. Immortal Tai Hua's pupils constricted violently as a strong sense of crisis enveloped him. It was as if he was going to die on the spot in the next moment. He wanted to escape and break free from this terrifying feeling, but he couldn't get rid of it no matter how hard he tried. He wanted to release the peerless mystical powers again, but his essence soul was in excruciating pain. He felt dizzy and almost fainted. At this moment, he finally understood something. All of Su Zimo's previous methods were to force him to release that peerless mystical powers. After he released the immortal slaying talisman, Su Zimo would use this killing move, and he would no longer be able to resist it. Time was like a saber, fleeting youth. In front of everyone, immortal Tai Hua was in his twilight years. His hair was white and his face was haggard. His face was full of wrinkles that seemed to have been carved by a blade. All the vigor, glory, pride, and sharpness in his body vanished in an instant. Immortal Tai Hua's chi and blood were weak. His body was hunched over, and his eyes were turbid. Filled with horror, he stretched out his skinny arm and pointed at Su Zimo, as if he wanted to say something. However, in the end, the reincarnated immortal still fell on his back. His essence soul was destroyed and his vitality was cut off. This time, his soul was destroyed, and he no longer had the chance to reincarnate. He died in the 9 heavens. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 2235. After Su Zimo killed immortal Tai Hua, he still did not let his guard down. Instead, he slowly turned around and looked diagonally behind him. In the sandstorm, a figure stood there vaguely. He had been watching the battle for a long time, and emitted a powerful aura. It was the other reincarnated immortal, Feng Yin. Su Zimo did not know much about Feng Yin, or the character and methods of this reincarnated immortal. Su Zimo was worried that this person would take advantage of the situation and attack him. Hence, he did not dare to be careless. In fact, Feng Yin did have such a thought in an instant. He wanted to take the opportunity to kill Su Zimo. Su Zimo's methods had already caused him to feel a deep sense of wariness, and even a hint of fear. If he were in immortal Tai Hua's place, he would not be able to escape death in the face of those methods. This person would definitely be his greatest opponent in the Earth role. It would be best if he could get rid of such a huge threat in advance. However, Feng Yin thought about it, and felt that Su Zimo was already at the end of his rope, and there was nothing to be afraid of. As a reincarnated immortal, he would be ridiculed by the world if he kicked him, while he was down in front of everyone even if he won. The elimination round was about to end, and the ranking battle would begin soon. In such a short period of time, Su Zimo would not be able to recover much essence, energy, and stamina. He had already used up all his trump cards. When the time came, he would still be able to defeat him openly in the ranking battle. There was no need for him to make a move here and become a laughingstock. Moreover, if he made a move now, he would definitely offend Qingquan Academy, and the gains would not make up for the losses. In the ranking battle, he could logically defeat or kill Su Zimo, and Qingquan Academy would not be able to say anything. Feng Yin stood there for a long time and did not leave. Most importantly, he was shocked by the scene of Su Zimo killing immortal Tai Hua just now. 36 consecutive mystical abilities. He resisted a peerless mystical ability with his physical body. Then he released a peerless mystical ability that could deplete one's lifespan in an instant. The depletion of one's lifespan was irreversible. It was too horrifying for an Earth immortal to use such a technique. This battle had indeed startled Feng Yin. Feng Yin took a deep breath and gradually calmed himself down. Finally, he smiled indifferently and turned to leave. No matter what, he was the biggest winner in this Earth roll competition. Su Zimo had exhausted all his means and consumed too much energy. His body was injured, and he was no longer able to fight with him. The rest were nothing to fear. The square outside the 9 heavens was already in an uproar. In every Earth roll contest, the ranking battle was the main event. After going through the baptism of the elimination round, the final 100 geniuses would face off against each other and kill each other. This was the most interesting part. However, no one had expected that such an intense battle would erupt in the elimination round. I thought that with the alliance of the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect, as well as the reincarnated Immortal, Qing Chenzi, and Han the Iron, there should be no suspense. Who would have thought? It's too tragic. The Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect had 22 Earth Immortals participating in the elimination round. In this battle, 18 of them were killed. Even the reincarnated Immortal is dead. The Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect have suffered a great loss this time. They have really taken a big tumble. Hearing the discussions around them, the faces of Duke Yuanzhua and Bai Hai were extremely ugly. They clenched their fists tightly and trembled slightly as they tried to suppress the anger in their hearts. Before this, Duke Yuanzhua was still clamoring to teach the Qingquan Academy a lesson. He wanted to remove the Qingquan Academy from the Earth roll this time. Now it seems, stop talking. The Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect have really embarrassed themselves this time. The Qingquan Academy only lost one person. They are almost all dead. Compared to Duke Yuanzhua and Bai Hai, the elders of the Qingquan Academy were naturally in high spirits. However, there was still a trace of grief and indignation in their hearts. Yi Fei's death still did not make them feel at ease. In the seats of the Pang clan, a large immortal Dao clan, a few members of the Pang clan looked at the tragic death of immortal Tai Hua in the 9th heaven and frowned deeply with grave expressions. Tai Hua's death is exactly the same as Pang Yu's. Could it be that there's something else behind Pang Yu's death? Could it be that Yang Ruoxu of the Qingquan Academy imparted this supreme superpower to this kid? A few members of the Pang clan secretly communicated with their divine senses. It's not that easy to comprehend such a supreme superpower. As far as I know, Pang Yu's death that day was caused by another outer sect disciple of the Qingquan Academy. Go back and find out who this outer sect disciple is. Before this, although the members of the Pang clan knew the cause, no one took this outer sect disciple seriously. No one would connect the death of a level 9 heaven immortal with an outer sect disciple of the academy and an earth immortal. Now immortal Tai Hua's death had aroused the suspicion of the Pang clan. In the 9th heaven, of course, Su Zimo knew that releasing Fleeting Youth would definitely attract the attention of the Pang clan. However, he had no other choice if he wanted to kill immortal Tai Hua as soon as possible. Moreover, he was the one who caused Pang Yu's death. It was senior brother Yang Ruoxu who took all the pressure and hostility for him. Yang Ruoxu should not be the one to bear the responsibility. This time in the 9th heaven, He had obtained many treasures, and the prison-suppressing cauldron was about to be completely repaired. When the time came, the 4 sacred souls would awaken, and they would be comparable to at least 4 top-tier heaven immortals. It would not be that easy for the Pang clan to kill him. Moreover, when he returned this time, he would begin to cultivate in seclusion and break through to the heaven immortal realm. The Pang clan had no chance at all. No matter how bold they were, they would not dare to come to the academy to kill and take revenge. Su Zimo looked at immortal Tai Hua at his feet and took his storage bag first, keeping it in his bag. Then Su Zimo straightened his palm and used it as a knife. He slashed down at immortal Tai Hua's throat and directly cut off his head. "You want to kill me, Su Zimo? And this is what you get." Su Zimo lifted immortal Tai Hua's head high up by his pale hair and looked into the sky. There was a hint of coldness in his eyes as he said loudly. This action caused an uproar outside the 9th heaven. He was provoking Commandery Prince Yuanzhua and Heaven Immortal Bai Hai. He was declaring war on the 2 of them. "Bitch! Ant!" Commandery Prince Yuanzhua was so angry that he gritted his teeth, and his face darkened. The result of this battle was equivalent to giving the state of Jin and the Flying Immortal sect a hard slap in the face. Since the establishment of the state of Jin, apart from Feng Cantillon, who had caused a lot of trouble, they had never been humiliated like this. It was the same for the Flying Immortal sect. This time, not only did the Flying Immortal sect lose face, but even Zither Immortal Mingyao's reputation was damaged. What kind of person was the Zither Immortal? What kind of person was she? This time, in order to deal with the Stage 8 Earth Immortal, she did not hesitate to invite a reincarnated immortal to come out of seclusion. She had mobilized so many people, but they were all killed. They wondered how the Zither Immortal would react when she found out about this. Chapter 2237. It's really unlocked. Princess Qihong was excited and energized. Hee. Lu Ping rubbed his chubby hands and grinned. He was happy to be able to help his senior brothers and sisters from the same sect. "Lu Ping, you're amazing." Princess Qihong was a little impulsive to begin with. After being sealed by immortal Tai Hua for so long and unable to move, she was really bored. She suddenly stretched out her hands and placed them on Lu Ping's tender cheeks. She rubbed them and said with a smile, "Little Lu Ping, so you were so cute when you were young." Lu Ping was dizzy from Princess Qihong's rubbing. However, he did not dare to attack as he was afraid that he would hurt Princess Qihong. "Junior sister Qihong, let him go. Let him unseal us. Junior brother Lu, come over and unseal us." The other senior brothers from Qiankuan Academy hurriedly shouted as well. Princess Qihong rubbed Lu Ping for a while before putting him down. It was as if Lu Ping had drunk strong wine. He walked unsteadily towards his fellow senior brothers, and once again lifted the seals on the other disciples of the academy. He suddenly became so strong. Xie Yun frowned slightly. Lu Ping, who had turned into a child, seemed to have become his potential opponent. "How is junior brother Su? Where is he?" Lu Ping asked again. "Junior brother Su is fine. He went after immortal Tai Hua." Princess Qihong pointed at the corpses on the battlefield and said, "These Earth Immortals from Dajin Immortal Kingdom and Flying Immortal Sect were all killed by Junior Brother Su." "Lu Ping, you didn't see it. Junior Brother Su's battle was really earth-shattering." "That's right. It's too scary. 18 peak Earth Immortals joined forces, but Junior Brother Su killed 16 of them and severely injured one. Even immortal Tai Hua was scared away." As he listened to the disciples of the Qiankuan Academy, Lu Ping could gradually imagine the grand occasion of this battle. "I'll go and help Junior Brother Su," Lu Ping said in a low voice. "I can't." A disciple shook his head and said, "Junior Brother Su is chasing after immortal Tai Hua. Both of them have disappeared. How are you going to find them?" "That's true." Lu Ping lowered his head slightly. "Oh right, there's still one more thing that needs to be resolved." When Princess Qihong saw the corpses on the battlefield, she suddenly thought of something. She turned around and walked in front of Mo Qian. She stretched out her palm and shouted, "Hand over your storage bag." "What are you shouting for?" Mo Qian raised his eyebrows and said impatiently, What storage bag? I don't know. Regardless of whether it was the prediction of the Earth Board or the Earth Board stone tablet, he was ranked in the top 20. In terms of combat strength, he wasn't inferior to Princess Chi-Hong. Those earthly immortals from the Dajin Immortal Kingdom and the Flying Immortal Sect were killed by my junior brother Su. Those storage bags naturally belonged to him. Don't even think about taking them for yourself. Princess Chi-Hong argued for what was right and wasn't willing to show weakness. Hehe. Emo Qian could not resist laughing and said, "Really interesting. Su Zimo has been gone for so long, but no one has touched those storage bags. They are clearly ownerless items, and anyone can take them. What? If Su Zimo doesn't come back in 10,000 years, others won't be allowed to take those storage bags?" Princess Chi-Hong was enraged. Even though she knew that Emo Qian was being unreasonable, she had her reservations. Hence, she fought with the earthly immortals of Imperial Wind Monastery over a dozen storage bags. There were 11 earthly immortals of Imperial Wind Monastery here, and they were all looking over with hostility. Although the face was extremely old and filled with wrinkles, everyone could recognize that it was Immortal Tai Hua's face. Pust! Immortal Tai Hua was dead. Immortal Tai Hua abandoned Han Tai and fled alone, but he did not manage to escape this calamity and was chased to death by Su Zimo. He even had his head chopped off. Looking at Su Zimo's handsome face, everyone could not help but feel a chill down their spines. Hehe. At this moment Han Tai, who was lying on the ground and almost unable to move, suddenly laughed when he saw this scene. There was a trace of mockery in his eyes. Immortal Tai Hua abandoned him and fled alone, but he did not expect that he would still be ahead of him. This was fate. Su Zimo carried Immortal Tai Hua's head and turned back to look at Han Tai, who was not far away. Chi-Hong looked at Emo Qian, who was not far away, and hesitated to speak. She had originally wanted to tell him everything that had happened. However, after seeing Su Zimo's current state, she was worried that Su Zimo would not be able to defeat Feng Yin if he really fought with the cultivators of the Imperial Wind Monastery over the storage bags. Nothing. Chi-Hong lowered her head slightly and avoided his gaze as she replied. Naturally, Su Zimo could tell that the Red Rainbow Princess was hiding something. He surveyed his surroundings and swept his gaze across the corpses on the battlefield. Suddenly his heart skipped a beat as he asked, "Where are the storage bags on the corpses?" Some of the cultivators of Qingkuan Academy turned around instinctively and looked in the direction of the Imperial Wind Monastery. Su Zimo's heart lit up as he carried the 18 bloodied heads and walked over slowly. In the blink of an eye, he arrived before the cultivators of the Imperial Wind Monastery. Emo Qian and the others felt their hair stand on end when Su Zimo's gaze swept past them. "Who took them?" Su Zimo asked indifferently, although his tone was calm, and one could not tell if he was happy or angry. Emo Qian felt an unimaginable pressure that almost suffocated him. "I." Emo Qian could not withstand it and chuckled dryly, stuttering as he explained, "When I saw you leave, I didn't pick up those storage bags. I thought." Su Zimo did not say anything and merely looked at Emo Qian silently. Emo Qian's tone turned weaker and weaker until he could no longer continue. The only thing left in his ears were his heavy panting and the sound of fresh blood dripping from the 18 heads on the ground. Time after time, it sounded like the footsteps of the King of Hell. Just now, he had quibbled confidently in front of Chi-Hong and the other disciples of Qingkuan Academy. But now, Emo Qian could not bring himself to say the words ownerless items. It was as though a calamity would befall him the moment he said those words. A thin layer of sweat gradually appeared on Emo Qian's forehead, and bean-sized beads of sweat rolled down his cheeks. It was a little itchy, but he did not dare to wipe it off. "Don't be afraid." Right then, a voice sounded in Emo Qian's mind. It was senior brother Feng Yin's voice transmission. Emo Qian was invigorated, and the fear in his heart seemed to have faded significantly. He glanced sideways in Feng Yin's direction. At that moment, Feng Yin was standing not far away and looking over. His eyes shone with a divine light, and his aura was condensed, ready to strike. Mo Qian calmed down and took a deep breath. Mustering his courage, he turned to look at Su Zimo. Just as he was about to quibble, Su Zimo spoke once more. Hand it over. There were no superfluous words, and only 2 words were spoken in a calm tone. However, the courage that Mo Qian had just mustered was crushed by those 2 words, and he nearly broke down mentally. No one could understand the pressure that Mo Qian felt when facing Su Zimo. Su Zimo had just killed 18 peak Earth immortals, and even a reincarnated perfected immortal had died in his hands. This was a supreme might that was built with blood, slaughter and corpses, and possessed an irresistible deterrence. In front of Su Zimo, Mo Qian felt like a weak little white rabbit, while Su Zimo was an ancient ferocious beast that had just torn apart countless living beings and was emitting a torrential malevolent aura. In front of such a ferocious beast, Mo Qian crawled on the ground and trembled. Mo Qian dared to guarantee that if Su Zimo were to strike, even Feng Yin would not be able to save him. Here, they're all here. Mo Qian completely broke down. With a move of his divine sense, he took out the dozens of storage bags and handed them to Su Zimo with both hands. Very good. Su Zimo nodded, and his gaze seemed to be much gentler. He patted Mo Qian's shoulder and said softly, I might not be interested in these storage bags, but you have to remember these are my things. If I don't give them to you, you can't take them. Remember? Mo Qian's body trembled slightly, and he nodded subconsciously. Chapter 2239. Trash. In the square, Heaven Immortal Green Peak frowned when he saw that, and could not help but curse. You're a disgrace to my Imperial Wind Monastery. It belongs to Su Zimo to begin with. It's fine to return it to him. Perfected Immortal Xie Ling smiled gently and consoled. Heaven Immortal Green Peak's expression relaxed. However, just now, Mo Qian's performance was way too poor in front of Su Zimo, and he was as obedient as a little bunny. After returning to the sect, I'll let Mo Qian stay in the servant yard. Heaven Immortal Green Peak thought to himself. He had already decided on Mo Qian's future. In the 5th heaven, Feng Yin retracted his gaze and sighed internally, lamenting that it was a pity. Naturally, it would be for the best if he could get rid of Su Zimo in advance. However, he did not have any reason to do so in the 5th heaven, and he could not attack for no reason. If a conflict broke out between the 2 of them, because of this matter, he could naturally make a move and suppress Su Zimo. That was the reason why he told Mo Qian not to be afraid, and looked forward to the escalation of the conflict between the 2 of them. However, he did not expect that Su Zimo did not even move a single finger, and merely whispered a few words to Mo Qian for him to return the storage bag obediently. Now that things had come to this, Feng Yin could not say anything, and could only close his eyes to rest. Su Zimo glanced at Feng Yin, who was not far away. Just now, he could sense an intense hostility from this reincarnated immortal. However, it was quickly retracted. Not far away, more cultivators from Heaven and Earth Academy arrived, and were shocked when they caught sight of the bloody and tragic battlefield. Before long, a cultivator from the same sect came forth to explain, and everyone headed to the earth-ranking stone stele to leave their names. Junior brother Su, you haven't left your name on it yet. Princess Qihong pointed to the stone stele. You'll only be qualified to enter the final ranking battle if you leave your name on it. Although Su Zimo killed 18 Earth Immortals and left 18 spots empty, Heaven and Earth Immortals were still alive. However, the disciples of Heaven and Earth Academy came forth one after another to leave their names, and more or less filled up the empty spots. Furthermore, in the process of this battle, more cultivators arrived and left their names on the Earth ranking stone stele. The rankings above had already reached the 60th place. Su Zimo stepped forward and wrote his name on the stone tablet. The moment he left his name, his final ranking in the elimination round was confirmed. 68th. Within his sea of consciousness, the prison-suppressing cauldron began to vibrate. The treasure of the 5th heaven should be nearby. Su Zimo circled around the earth-ranking stone tablet and slowly retreated. He looked up and suddenly frowned. This huge stone tablet was 10 zhang tall, and at the 90 zhang position, there were 2 names side by side. It was extremely conspicuous, and they were above the others. One of the names was Taihua. What's going on? Su Zimo pointed at the two names and asked. They're all competitive, and don't want their names to be inferior to others. Princess Chi Hong explained. Su Zimo snorted coldly and said, I don't care about others, but immortal Taihua is not worthy. Boom! Su Zimo arrived before the earth-ranking stone tablet, and stomped his feet heavily on the ground, creating a deafening sound that caused the entire space to quake. A figure rose from the ground, and charged towards the peak of the earth-ranking stone tablet. That deafening sound attracted countless gazes.